Chapter 1985. So, you becoming a martial emperor is a necessary condition to be promoted to a middle world. If that's the case, then this alliance agreement is acceptable. The great-grandfather of the Shao clan smiled and said, "To everyone present, the realm of the gods was the strongest existence in the 3,000 small worlds. Being able to form an alliance with them was naturally not bad. Regarding this, they had nothing to object to. However, towards the middle world, everyone's attitude was different. For example, Qian Guangqi, he really wanted to see what the middle world was like. As for the Baldi, he was very sad. It was not easy for him to break through to the 9th rank and become a top existence. Now, it seemed that there was going to be a change. But after reaching the middle world, everything is unknown. So, I can't guarantee that everything will be normal." Xiao Yang sighed helplessly and said, Xiao Yang was very clear in his heart that the middle world's strength was much higher than that of the small worlds. At that time, if they encountered a world like the profound Do world that relied on conquering other worlds and stealing fate to become stronger, they would probably face some very serious problems. Even if they had an alliance with the realm of the gods, at that time they might not even be able to take care of themselves. How could they take care of the flowing cloud world? Of course, the dangers are unknown, but at the same time the rewards are great. For example, in the 3,000 small worlds, only a few martial emperors will appear. But if you reach the middle world, your fate and spiritual qi will become stronger. At that time, your cultivation will be smoother. Xiao Yang said. When these words came out, Qian Guangqi's eyes could not help but light up. If that was the case, then it was not bad. Previously, Qian Guangqi did not believe in this. However, after going out to train and seeing so much, he understood. He knew why the flowing cloud world was so different from the other worlds. Xiao Yang did not stay in the flowing cloud world for long, but his cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. This was enough to make people ponder. The thickness of fate and spiritual qi were things that could not be ignored. If you don't have these, then it will be really difficult to move forward. It might not have much to do with your aptitude. Whatever the boss wants me to do, I'll do it. Baldi gave a simple and honest smile, although everything was full of unknowns, and he might even have to pay a terrible price for it. However, in Baldi's eyes, this was not important. If he could really go to the 3,000 middle worlds to take a look, then his life would not have been in vain. Qian Guangqi also nodded excitedly. He really wanted to experience it. There's no need to reply to me at this time. Think about it, Xiao Yang said in a low voice. Everyone nodded one after another. They had their own thoughts on this matter, and there were still some small calculations that needed to be done. I feel that this matter is indeed feasible. However, with the current strength of our flowing cloud realm, I'm afraid that even if we want to form an alliance with the god realm, we will still be climbing up the social ladder. Sun Dishing said somewhat worriedly. Xiao Yang also nodded his head. He had naturally thought about this problem before. How arrogant were the people of the god realm. Furthermore, the overall strength of the flowing cloud realm was thrown 18 streets behind the god realm. They were simply incomparable. At that time, it was inevitable that they would be looked down upon and be angered for no reason. However, there was no other way. Strength was the most important. As long as you were strong enough, then the other party would not have such thoughts. Regarding this point, Xiao Yang had already thought about it many times. However, whether or not he could completely change the situation, he was not very confident. However, if he tried, even if he could not achieve parity, it would be enough to benefit the entire flowing cloud realm. Therefore, we don't have much time. Not only do I have to forcefully break through to the martial emperor realm in this period of time, but I also have to increase the overall strength of the flowing cloud realm. Xiao Yang said helplessly. When Baldi heard this, he suddenly raised his head. He looked at Xiao Yang and suddenly understood. After Xiao Yang returned, he gave them pills and imparted techniques. From then on, he had already started to think about increasing the overall strength of the flowing cloud world. It could be said that this plan had already started long ago. Baldy had also received the pills and knew how to break through to the 9th level. This was enough to show that Boss did not treat him as an outsider. Thank you, Boss. In the future, I will not say a single word of no, even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire. Baldy was just short of tears and snot. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and the way they looked at Baldy also changed. Where is this guy singing now? They were also a little confused. Baldy's current reaction was really a little strange, and they could not make heads or tails of it. Xiao Yang glanced at him and said indifferently, "No need to be so formal. Since you have joined the flowing cloud realm, then you are a comrade." Everyone comforted him for a while before Baldy calmed down and stopped being so agitated. "I also want to see the wider world. Unfortunately, my strength does not allow me to do so," Sun Yukai said helplessly. When Xiaoyang heard this, he frowned slightly. He also knew that the Sun family's 2 people were indeed extraordinary in terms of governance. However, their cultivation aptitude could only be considered ordinary. "Don't worry, the 2 of you have contributed the most to the Northern Light City. I also have a lot of elixirs and natural treasures that can increase one's aptitude. When the time comes, you can take them and eat them. Due to the governance of the Northern Light City, I have delayed your cultivation. I am truly sorry," Xiaoyang said very sincerely. Although the Sun family's 2 people's realms were not high, to be able to run the originally weak Northern Light City to its current flourishing state, it could be said that their abilities were extraordinary. Everyone had their own areas of expertise. "Thank you, City Lord." Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing immediately bowed and said. Their original intention to retire was also slightly reduced at this moment, because they were very clear that Xiaoyang did not neglect them. "Baldy, if we really form an alliance with the God realm in the future, you and Qin Mingho will take turns to protect them," Xiaoyang said in a deep voice. In this upper realm, no one would make a move against Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing. They were not stupid. It could be said that the 2 of them already had a huge influence on the flowing cloud realm. However, this was only limited to the flowing cloud realm. In the wider world, they would also become unknown people. Others had not seen how powerful they were, so they would only look at their strength and realms. These 2 people were indispensable to Xiaoyang, but they were not to the others. Chapter 1986. Next, Xiaoyang told everyone about what he had seen and heard in the various worlds, which could be considered as a way to broaden their knowledge. However, most of it was about the realm of the gods. When everyone knew that the starting point of the realm of the gods was Kingwu level 8, all of them were extremely shocked. They felt that it was too hard to imagine. What kind of powerful existence was that? Level 8 King Wu level 8 experts were everywhere. It was terrifying, and in the flowing cloud world, the number of King Wu level 8 experts could be counted with one hand. This also made everyone present clear that they still had a long way to go. The distance between them and the realm of the gods was still very far. Since they were the backbone of the Northern Light City, they naturally had to put in more effort. It could be said that other than the 2 from the Sun family, everyone present knew that they would have to work even harder in their cultivation. Otherwise, if they were huge figures in the flowing cloud world, but after going there, they couldn't even compare to the starting point of others. How could they endure that? After talking about these things for a long time, Qi and Guangqi and the rest left one after another. The 2 from the Sun family were asked to stay by Xiaoyang. "I know what you guys are worried about. If your strength doesn't match up to your status, then it's a disaster," Xiaoyang said decisively. Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing nodded in agreement. They had discussed this issue before. Although they had lofty aspirations, if they were to lose their lives before they could achieve anything, then what was the point of it all? "City Lord, we have indeed discussed this matter before. If we go to a bigger stage, I'm afraid it'll be hard for us to continue," Sun Yukai said. Although Sun Yukai had said it well before, after careful consideration, Once the flowing cloud world jumped out of the current situation, then they would have to go into hiding. Otherwise, once they were targeted, they would be doomed. Although they were extremely reluctant, they still had to consider this aspect clearly. If they made a mistake, then they wouldn't have a good ending. I've said it before, you guys don't have to worry. In these years of traveling, I have indeed obtained many good things. Therefore, it's not a problem to help you raise your aptitude and realm, Xiaoyang said sincerely. Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing were stunned. Although they believed Xiaoyang's words before, they were afraid that the other party would not give them too much. After all, it wasn't worth it to spend it on them. Your abilities are obvious to all. Right now, if anyone else were to govern Borealis City, as long as they aren't greedy or stupid, they would be able to firmly hold the position of number one in the upper realm. However, if you want to take care of everything, I'm afraid it won't be possible, Xiaoyang said. When the two of them heard this, they remained silent. At the same time, their hearts were filled with shock. They did not expect Xiaoyang to have seen through everything. This was truly a little unexpected. Don't think that it's not worth it. As long as you can use external items to increase your strength, it's worth it. After all, it's easy to find a disciple with high aptitude, but it's not easy to find someone who can rule the world, Xiaoyang said firmly. After receiving Xiaoyang's affirmation, the two of them were filled with excitement. Now, they also felt that everything they did was worth it, not to mention that it would make them successful and famous. It felt good to follow such a master. We'll naturally do our best, Sun Yukai said with a fist salute. Xiaoyang smiled faintly. Immediately after, he took out a ring from his chest and handed it to them. He said, "The items to increase your aptitude and strength have been prepared for you. Feel free to use them. If it's not enough, just say the word." Although using these items to forcefully increase your strength will naturally not be comparable to ordinary cultivators, it's barely enough to scare some people. Thank you, City Lord. Sun Dishing received the ring with excitement. Immediately after, Xiaoyang began to explain in detail how to use some of the pills and what they should pay attention to. As he spoke, the sun set in the west. Prepare the letters now. The content is to invite all the leaders of the first and second-rate sects in the upper realm to come to our North Light City to discuss matters. After you've prepared them, don't set a date or send them out. Wait for my news, Xiaoyang said with a smile. Sun Yukai nodded and said, "Understood." Why was there a delay? Sun Yukai felt that there were some things that had not been completed, so there was no hurry to speak of it. Moreover, it would be difficult to persuade the entire flowing cloud world to accept such a change. Although with Xiaoyang's current reputation, everyone would follow him, some of the ancient sects and clans had not seen much. How could they be willing to take the risk? As such, they had to take out something that could convince them. Only then could they speak of these matters. You don't have to do everything by yourself. Why don't you teach them and share some of the pressure? When the time comes, you can also cultivate in seclusion and increase your cultivation level, Xiaoyang said seriously. It could be said that since the establishment of North Light City, Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing had been worrying about the matters here and did not have time to cultivate at all. As such, their cultivation levels had all soared while they were still in the same place. Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing were stunned at first, and their expressions changed slightly. Because of their strength, their value lies in their governance. If others could do it, what use would they have? Understood. Although Sun Yukai was a bit hesitant, he still agreed. If there was someone to share the pressure, it would naturally be good. After all, if he had to take on everything himself, it would indeed be very tiring. As for what changes would happen in the future, they would talk about it in the future. Moreover, what they felt was sincere, and not some backup plan prepared by the other party to get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. If Xiaoyang was really prepared to get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness, why would he give so many things? In the next few days, I will set up a formation in North Light City. One of you two will go into seclusion, and the other will be in charge, Xiaoyang said. Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing also immediately agreed. Today was different from the past, and there was no need to keep an eye on it every day. Moreover, Xiaoyang had also returned. After assigning a few more matters, Xiaoyang returned to his own residence. Sun Dishing and Sun Yukai looked at each other and smiled, laughing very happily. In their opinion, they had clearly met a wise master. Why couldn't they leave their names in history in the future? Chapter 1987. The next day, Xiaoyang set off early. Under the leadership of Sun Yukai, he began to survey the terrain of Borealis City. As for Sun Dishing, after the end of yesterday's meeting, he took those things and went into seclusion. He said that if he couldn't break through to rank 5 of Kingwu, he would definitely not come out of seclusion. It could be seen how great his perseverance was. It could be said that the 2 people of the Sun family had always been in a high position, but in recent years it was inevitable that there would be some undeserved rumors. The realm had also become a pain in their hearts. Even though there wasn't the slightest problem on a daily basis, he was still secretly worried about it. Some of the disciples in Borealis City saw the Vice City Lord and the City Lord walking outside, and suddenly some people's attitude began to be restrained. So what if Sun Yukai didn't live up to his name? The City Lord valued him. Even if he had many crooked thoughts, he could only hide them and not dare to show them. On the contrary, there was a portion of people who had joined the Northern Light City since it was first established, who knew that even though the realms of these 2 Vice City Lords were low, they were able to lead this team from the most difficult times to the present. During those times, their contributions couldn't be ignored. Although the Northern Light City's territory wasn't large, it was still a very big project to investigate every corner of the city. It wasn't an easy thing to do, because Xiaoyang wanted to plant a spiritual vein here with Borealis City as the center. Because it was only a pseudo-spiritual vein, there couldn't be the slightest mistake and negligence in every place. Among them, there must be the support of a formation to be able to be guaranteed. As for how long the pseudo-spiritual vein could be used, in Xiaoyang's view, it still had to be supported for 100 years no matter what. Therefore, during this period of time, how to maximize the effect of the pseudo-spiritual vein naturally became a great problem. Sun Yukai followed all the way and also explained to Xiaoyang in detail what the functions of these places were. If they were to start, what kind of influence and changes would be ushered in. In this contact, Xiaoyang found that Sun Yukai was indeed very powerful. It was as if Borealis City was like his body. No matter where it was, he was very clear. Even how to plan for the future could be said to be very clear in his heart. This made Xiaoyang think even more highly of this person. After surveying for a day, Xiaoyang returned to his house and began to mark on the map sent by Sun Yukai. Although Xiaoyang had countless formations in his mind that could be strengthened, many of them were impractical. After all, no matter how powerful or heaven-defying the array was, it had to be adapted to local conditions. Therefore, it was inevitable that there would be some changes. Regarding this, Xiaoyang could be said to have racked his brains. He had countless ideas in his heart. Furthermore, at the final juncture, he began to refute them one by one and began to repeatedly argue. After all, if there were any variables, perhaps all their efforts would be in vain. Perhaps the heavenly treasures that they had prepared would be wasted because of this, and they would not be able to display their original effects. If that was the case, it would be a fly in the ointment. In this regard, Xiaoyang naturally had to think thrice before acting. He could not afford to make the slightest mistake. Another day passed. Xiaoyang gave a ring that he had prepared to Sun Yukai and asked him to distribute the resources within to the backbone of Borealis City so that they could improve their strength during this period of time. Moreover, he also told these backbone members to not go out to train and to stay in the flowing cloud world. When the time came, if something big really happened, he would have to discuss it with them. Although Xiaoyang could now decide everything by himself, out of respect for his comrades, he could not do such a thing. Sun Yukai also believed Xiaoyang's words and began to bring the old master Xiao to familiarize himself with some things in Borealis City. Since the old master Xiao had been in charge of a family in the Middle Stream region, he naturally had some experience in this. Therefore, he became the most suitable candidate. When the news of Xiao Yang scouting the terrain in Borealis City spread, many people began to discuss it again. Xiao Yang had stayed in Borealis City for so long this time, and there was no news at all. This made people feel very strange. After all, in the past, he paid attention to preaching and going out to train to sharpen his strength and cultivation. But now he was peacefully staying in Borealis City. How could this not make people feel strange? It could be said that what made people puzzled was that after the extreme Yang sect's old ancestor returned, he closed his door and studied. He was so angry that he even collected ancient books from all over the world. This practice made the entire upper stream region puzzled. It could be said that there were too many suspicious points. It made people unable to figure out what exactly happened when the two of them were in the profound fighting world for such a situation to occur. Many people could be said to have broken their heads, but could not figure out the reason. They felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Even most of the disciples in Borealis City did not know what was going on. However, they did not think too much about it. As long as the city lord was there, nothing would be a problem. Chu Tain stood on top of the Tain Sex mountain. He looked into the distance and frowned slightly. Previously, he felt that once he reached the 9th level of Kingwu, he would definitely be able to recover some of it. However, when he truly experienced the wonders of this level, he realized how terrifying the gap was. Of course, what made Chu Tain even more puzzled was why Xiao Yang was so carefree in teaching him and even gave him such a precious pill. Now that he knew the real level, a feeling of uneasiness rose in Chu Tain's heart. He felt that Xiao Yang must be playing a big game of chess. As for the entire flowing cloud world, it was likely that an earth-shaking change would occur because of Xiao Yang. Now that he had received the news, Chu Tain was even more certain that Xiao Yang's forceful increase in everyone's strength could only be for the drifting cloud world. Or could it be that the drifting cloud world was about to undergo a major change? So Xiao Yang was in such a hurry to create more experts? In the end, Chu Tain smiled bitterly and shook his head. With regards to Xiao Yang, the younger generation, he was increasingly unable to see through him. However, one thing was certain. Everything he did was probably for the drifting cloud world. Chapter 1988. Within a few days, Xiao Yang had already thoroughly explored the Northern Light City. Furthermore, he knew every corner of the city like the back of his hand. A suitable formation could be said to have been formed in his mind. Next, he had a concept of how to set up the formation. However, there were still some details that needed to be fixed. Next, Xiao Yang didn't continue to stay in the Northern Light City. Instead, he walked out and began to wander around the upper realm. Now, Xiao Yang's thoughts had become even broader. If he were to use the Northern Light City as the center, could he allow the entire upper realm to enjoy the benefits of this pseudo-spiritual vein? Although it was unavoidably a little whimsical, after all, the effects of a man-made pseudo-spiritual vein were still limited. If he wanted to expand the range of its radiation, he was afraid that it would be depleted even faster. Xiao Yang naturally understood this logic in his heart. However, he was now making preparations. After all, who knew if he could make another trip to the divine realm in the future and obtain more pseudo-spiritual veins? At that time, if the entire upper realm could enjoy it, then the strength of this place would probably become even stronger. Such a blessing for the common people was still worth thinking about. Since he wanted to push the flowing cloud world into the 3,000 middle worlds, if he couldn't change the environment here, he was afraid that going there would only lead to a huge disaster. If he couldn't even protect himself, then what was the point of going there? Furthermore, Xiao Yang couldn't be in the flowing cloud world all the time. In a day's time, Xiao Yang didn't walk far. However, he was already very familiar with the flow and direction of the spiritual energy in this area, whether it was thin or not, like the back of his hand. After Xiao Yang took out a map and marked it on it, the corners of his mouth revealed a satisfied smile. In his opinion, if there were enough materials to support these ideas, they could still be completed. Success or failure, naturally, couldn't be clearly described in a few words. However, one thing was very clear, and that was if you didn't do anything, you naturally wouldn't succeed. Therefore, Xiaoyang was also working hard for this now. Only by doing his best could he continuously increase the chances of success and obtain the final success. Looking at the scorching sun in the sky, Xiaoyang had some thoughts in his mind. Soon after, he shook his head with a bitter smile. Such a thought was indeed slightly absurd and unrealistic. After resting for a while, Xiaoyang continued to move forward and explore more places. He didn't know if it was because there were more things and experts in the flowing cloud realm, but the spirit qi here was thicker than usual. This made Xiaoyang feel a little strange. However, Xiaoyang didn't think too much about it because the dense spiritual energy was just a little bit. It was normal for there to be some fluctuation somewhere. Moreover, because there were few cultivators in these deep mountains and forests, wasn't it normal for there to be more qi? Everywhere he went, Xiaoyang would meet some cultivators. However, they just nodded and smiled. Those who were braver would also come over to greet him. Among them, there was no lack of people who wanted to chat with Xiaoyang and get some benefits. However, they didn't know that he didn't listen to what these people said at all. After Xiaoyang greeted them, he left. The current Xiaoyang could be said to be a popular figure in the flowing cloud realm. He was an existence that most people worshipped. If he really had to meet everyone and talk about his experience, then he naturally didn't need to continue doing his things. On this day, Xiaoyang came to the territory of the Sun-Moon sect. The ruins left behind by the invasion of the profound fighting world had almost been repaired, and after a period of time, even the last traces would disappear without a trace. The disciples of the Sun-Moon sect were no longer as idle as before. It seemed that after experiencing that incident, they understood the importance of strength even more, so they had become very diligent in their cultivation. After a while, a barefoot man rushed to the sky and stood opposite Xiaoyang. "Thank you for teaching me and giving me the pill that allowed me to enter the 9th stage of King Wu." The barefoot man cupped his hands and bowed. After seeing this scene, many disciples of the Sun-Moon sect were amazed in their hearts. Even their old ancestor had to be respectful to this young man. It could be seen that Xiaoyang was a person of virtue and prestige. Sometimes, strength could indeed determine many things. However, as a superior, it was also very difficult to be outstanding. Now, Chu Taiyin's tone had become much more respectful because he no longer treated the young man in front of him as a junior. This was because he knew very well that if it weren't for Xiaoyang's generosity in teaching, he would probably still be struggling in the 8th stage. Now that he had reached the 9th stage, he was an even more important figure. Because of this, Chu Taiyin's mentality had undergone a huge change. He used to think that he was very powerful, but now it seemed that he was just a frog at the bottom of the well. Xiaoyang waved his hand indifferently and said, "Senior, you don't have to take it to heart. It's just a small matter." When Chu Taiyin heard this, the corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. The teaching could be said to be a small matter, but how precious was the pill? That would not be a small matter. However, Chu Taiyin did not know that after Xiaoyang returned this time, he had refined another furnace of meridians condensing pills. Although there were only 9 pills, it was enough. "Xiaoyang, your actions this time can be said to be the style of a scholar, but I am more curious about your purpose in doing all this." Chu Taiyin frowned and asked. This was also something that Chu Taiyin could not understand for a long time. As a result, he also hoped to obtain an answer from Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang was taken aback, but he only smiled faintly and said, "I want to change the current situation of the flowing cloud world and make it stronger, to a level that none of you can imagine." When he said this, Chu Taiyin's expression became even more solemn. What Xiaoyang was doing was indeed like that. However, how was he going to change it? Moreover, wasn't his current actions a little too hasty? "No matter what you do, I will help you." Chu Taiyin had already remembered this kindness. In the future, no matter what it is, as long as it doesn't harm the flowing cloud world. I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire, Chu Taiyin said with great determination. Hearing Chu Taiyin's attitude, Xiaoyang only smiled. In the future, it would be much easier to form alliances with a few large sects leading the way. Chapter 1989. After chatting for a while, Chu Taiyin talked about the general situation of the flowing cloud boundary and the recent changes, then parted ways. Originally, Chu Taiyin had invited Xiaoyang to have a meal together, but Xiaoyang declined because he wanted to do more things, so he didn't want to waste time. Seeing that Xiaoyang was indeed planning something, Chu Taiyin couldn't force him to stay, so he sent Xiaoyang 1,000 miles away and returned to the Sun Moon sect. Chu Taiyin sat in his own courtyard, thinking that Xiaoyang had told him not to leave the flowing cloud boundary during this period of time. This made him even more certain that there was something big going on. However, it wasn't time to say it yet. In the end, Chu Taiyin didn't even think about going into seclusion. In his opinion, it wouldn't be bad to wait for some things. If he missed it because of his stubbornness, it wouldn't be good. This kid is truly an interesting person. Chu Taiyin smiled bitterly as he muttered to himself. Right now, Chu Taiyin was also looking forward to it. Although Xiaoyang's explanation was very vague, he believed that since this young man was wholeheartedly working on this matter, the flowing cloud world would definitely usher in earth-shattering changes in the future. Then, Xiaoyang continued to move forward. He also wanted to finish exploring the upper realm in the shortest time possible. When he reached the extreme Yang sect, he received news from the sect master that Ancestor Muyang was studying in seclusion, so he didn't come out to receive him. Xiaoyang didn't care about this. As for Muyang's sudden change in personality, he was actually able to sit down and read quietly, and he even collected ancient books. This made him look at him in a new light. Then, Xiaoyang also visited many places, but the places he stayed were all places that he had some relations with before. As for those sects that he didn't have any relations with, even if he stayed, he felt that there was nothing to say, so there was no need to. During this period of time, the Dark Night Holy Land had undergone great changes. Yi Shi-san, Yi 19, and the others began to work hard after their previous experience in the demon realm. Their strength could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. Holy Lord and Fei Yi dragged Xiaoyang for a drink. The two of them were filled with emotions. Back then, they saw Xiaoyang as a child, but now he had become the #1 person in the flowing cloud realm, which made them feel extremely gratified. After drinking, Xiaoyang deliberately leaked some information. The Dark Knight, Holy Lord, also expressed his attitude. As long as it wasn't something outrageous, they would agree. In the end, Xiaoyang settled down at his own home, Xiao Family Mountain. During this period of time, Xiao Changxing's injuries had already completely recovered. Moreover, after he found out that Chu Taiyin had broken through, he also began to go into seclusion. Therefore, the one who received Xiaoyang was the current head of the upper realm Xiao family, Xiao Dahai. Previously, Xiao Dahai's realm wasn't high, but under the guidance of the Xiao family's ancestor, he had broken through 2 realms consecutively. He could barely be considered the average of the flowing cloud realm's families. After talking for a while, Xiaoyang returned to Northlight City without stopping. After returning to Northlight City, Xiaoyang directly gathered Baldi, Sun Yukai, and the others together. Although it was already late at night, there was no difference between day and night for cultivators. Everyone could be said to be full of energy and looked like they were ready to go. Previously, I said that I wanted to set up a formation in Northlight City, Xiaoyang said in a deep voice. Everyone nodded. At that time, Xiaoyang was talking about the Great Protection Formation. However, I have changed my mind. The previous Great Protection Formation will be temporarily put aside. Let's set up this Heavenly Circulation Orderly Formation first, Xiaoyang said in a deep voice. Everyone was stunned for a moment. They had never heard of this formation before. This Heavenly Circulation Orderly Formation is a formation that I created myself. The effect of this formation was similar to that of a spirit gathering formation. However, The effects of this heavenly circulation, orderly formation, are tens of thousands of times stronger than spirit-gathering formations, Xiaoyang explained slowly. Sun Yukai smiled but didn't say anything. He was the clearest about this matter. Back then, when they were surveying the terrain, he had been following Xiaoyang all along. On the other hand, Old Master Xiao and the others were now a little confused. This heavenly circulation, orderly formation, can envelop the entire North Light City. When the time comes, the spirit chi here will also be tens of times thicker because of this formation. Xiaoyang said. Once these words were spoken, it instantly caused a huge uproar. Qi and Guangqi and the others' jaws almost dropped to the ground. What kind of concept would it be if the spirit chi here was tens of times thicker? Arctic Gray Feather was even a little in disbelief. He pinched himself to make sure that this wasn't a dream, but reality. Isn't this a little too exaggerated? Qian Guangqi stuttered. Xiaoyang thought for a moment and said, even if it's not tens of times, it's at least tens of times. When these words were spoken, Qian Guangqi almost fainted from anger. Obviously, he was still rather shocked by these words. In fact, it had already exceeded his understanding, which was why he was so shocked and in disbelief. However, sometimes reality was just that terrifying. Previously, after receiving the things that Xiaoyang had given them, they knew that the things that Xiaoyang possessed were already beyond their imagination. Xiaoyang, if this is really the case, then the Northern Light City will also become a holy land for cultivation. When that time comes, our prestige will be unparalleled in the world. Old Master Xiao also said in shock. What was happening now could be said to have brought about too much of a shock to them. With regards to this, it was even more difficult for them to understand. They simply couldn't come back to their senses. Xiaoyang only smiled indifferently and said, this is just the beginning. Moreover, compared to the realm of the gods, even if this heavenly cycle orderly formation is completed, the difference will still be like heaven and earth. When these words were spoken, Qi and Guangqi and the others were once again shocked. If this was the case, then wouldn't the spirit chi in the realm of the gods be as real? However, this also further explained why the realm of the gods could be filled with rank 8 experts like King Wu. Under such a huge environment, if one couldn't step foot into King Wu's rank 8, it would probably be embarrassing. I believe that everyone has no objections. Then let's start moving. We will complete this formation in the shortest time possible. Xiaoyang said. Everyone responded with cheers. 3 days later, at noon, there will be a small spirit chi tide. At that time, it will be the best time to complete the formation. Of course, everyone shouldn't be in a hurry. If there's even the slightest mistake, all our efforts will be in vain. Xiaoyang said seriously. Chapter 1990. Then, Xiaoyang began to explain the principles behind the formation. He also explained everything that they needed to pay attention to. After all, if he wanted to complete the formation by himself, it would naturally be possible. However, there were too many things that needed to be taken note of. In a highly concentrated situation, it was inevitable that there would be some mistakes. Therefore, it would be much easier to allocate some of the less important areas. Moreover, this method could also give them some experience, allowing them to feel some of the mysteries of this formation. For their cultivation, this was also a very valuable experience. After explaining everything clearly, Xiaoyang also handed over the storage rings to each of them. In the end, the old Master Xiao and Lin Shiyun were in the same group. Qi and Guangqi was in the same group as Arctic Gray Feather. Baldy was in the highest realm and had seen the most, so he was alone. As for Sun Yukai, because he had many things to take care of and because his realm was slightly lower, he did not participate in this operation. Before this, Xiaoyang had thought of inviting Chu Taiying and Muyang to help. However, the reason why he rejected this idea was very simple. They had not truly begun to form an alliance, so there was no need to rush it. Moreover, If he invited them to complete the formation together, it would be a huge problem as to how the resources would be distributed in the future. Therefore, when it came to the people's hearts, he had to consider more to ensure that there would not be any problems. Everyone, thank you for your hard work over the next few days, Xiaoyang said in a serious tone. It could be said that, from Xiaoyang's point of view, this was an alliance with the realm of the gods. The first thing he could do was to improve his own faction. As for the other sects, they could only be discussed in the future. Boss, don't worry. I'll definitely do this beautifully for you. Baldy rubbed his bald head and smiled honestly. At this moment, Sun Yukai said slowly, I've already ordered people to vacate the space that we need to use. I've also arranged for people to do some small tasks. Hearing this, Xiaoyang nodded his head in satisfaction. Before he went to explore this upper realm, he had given the map to Sun Yukai and instructed him to do some things. He didn't expect that Sun Yukai would complete the task so quickly and beautifully. However, this also made Xiaoyang worry less. If he didn't have to worry about something insignificant, then he wouldn't worry about it. Xiaoyang, don't worry. This is related to our Arctic Light City's 100-year plan. We will definitely do our best, Arctic Gray Feather said with a smile. Although everyone had taken on a lot of work, they felt that it was all worth it. This was because Xiaoyang did not treat them as outsiders and allowed them to participate in this important segment. They were extremely happy. All right, I've told you everything I need to tell you. Some of the details are in the ring. There's no time to lose. Let's start now, Xiaoyang said. Old Master Xiao, Qian Guangqi, and the others also immediately got up. After a few words of response, they all walked out excitedly. How could they not be excited when they thought that what they did this time would benefit Arctic Light City for 100 years? On the other hand, Old Master Xiao couldn't help but feel a little helpless because Arctic Light City would indeed become stronger because of this. However, their Xiao family didn't seem to be able to obtain too many benefits. The Xiao family's previous haze had indeed been swept away because of Xiaoyang's rise and the return of the old ancestor. However, they were still facing an awkward situation where they had no successor. Lin Shiyin saw that old Master Zhao's expression was solemn. She just smiled indifferently and didn't say anything. After all, some things were wrong if you opened your mouth. Why should you say anything more? City Lord, how was the trip this time? Sun Yukai asked with a smile when he saw that everyone had left. Xiaoyang thought for a moment and said, Now it seems that the whole world is willing to submit. I just don't know if this is my illusion or the truth. After saying this, Xiaoyang also sighed, because now it could be said that he was dragging the flowing cloud world forward alone. There were too many hardships in this. Moreover, there were also many uncontrollable situations that were difficult to ignore. City Lord doesn't need to worry too much. Previously, you returned with a great victory in the profound fighting world. That's like a savior. The whole world will naturally submit to you. However, it's inevitable that some sects will think about some benefits. When the time comes, you can take out some things and completely subdue them, Sun Yukai said with a smile. Of course. Sun Yukai had another plan in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. Although the risk of doing that wasn't great, it would cause countless changes. If a little change really happened, it would be enough to give people a headache. Maybe it would become even worse because of it. Therefore, it was naturally the best choice to subdue them in the most gentle way. At the very least, in Sun Yotsai's opinion, there was no need for them to ruin their reputation. Xiaoyang nodded and said, How are those things going? The letters have been prepared. I've prepared letters for all the second-rate sects, clans, and cities. May I know if the city lord needs to take a look? Sun Yukai asked softly. Xiaoyang waved his hand and said, I'm not worried about you. Sun Yukai chuckled when he heard this. He also felt very comfortable with such trust. City Lord, have you ever thought about the tree that stands out in the forest? Sun Yotsai's tone suddenly became much more serious. Sun Yotsai's meaning was very obvious. Once the universal circulation array was completed, it would probably face a new problem, which was that it would be unevenly distributed. When the time came, the other forces in the upper realm would naturally not dare to do anything to North Light City. However, there would inevitably be some changes when the time came. Xiaoyang waved his hand and said, "It won't be a problem if we vacate a few courtyards." Sun Yukai smiled when he heard this, but he didn't refute it. As for how the courtyards were used, it was up to them to decide. Since that's the case, I won't hold you back from your important matters. I'll take my leave first. Sun Yukai stood up and cupped his hands. Xiaoyang waved his hand and said, "You should rest more too. Don't overwork yourself. This is nothing, it's just a small matter. It's much easier than charging into enemy lines and getting yourself into dangerous situations." Sun Yukai left after he said that. Not long after, Xiaoyang also left the meeting hall to do his own things. Chapter 1991. Xiaoyang was at the center of North Light City. He looked at the bright moon in the sky, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He sensed that Qi and Guangqi and the others had done a good job. Although their progress was not very fast, there were no flaws at all. Therefore, he needed to complete the most important part, which was the center of the Northern Light City under his feet, which was also the core of the formation. Xiaoyang, who was still a little worried, checked it again and began to work. A mysterious light flashed, and a pillar that was 90 feet tall immediately flew out. It hung in the sky and emitted an extremely domineering aura. There was a black dragon coiled around the pillar. It was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, giving people a soul-stirring feeling. This pillar was called the Dragon Vibrating Pillar. Disregarding everything else, just this pillar alone was comparable to a high-grade heaven-level artifact. It was obvious how precious it was. This item was the compensation from the old Prime Minister of the God Realm. There were a total of 9 dragon vibrating pillars, and every one of them was a high-grade heaven-level artifact. If he could make good use of the 9 dragon vibrating pillars, the combined power of his attack would be comparable to that of a lower sacred grade celestial artifact. In fact, there was a freak in the God Realm who was able to display the might of the 9 dragon vibrating pillars to the mid-grade saint level, which shocked many people. However, if one wanted to control the 9 dragon vibrating pillars with one's heart, it would be a great test for one's state of mind. Not everyone was exceptionally talented. Therefore, after that senior, no one had been able to unleash the full might of the dragon vibrating pillars. In fact, controlling 5 pillars at once was the limit for most people. If there were more, why not use a saint-level artifact? Therefore, in the eyes of many people, the dragon vibrating pillars were an extremely useless existence. As time passed, they gathered dust. Xiaoyang had searched for a long time before he finally discovered the uniqueness of the dragon vibrating pillars. Furthermore, they were very suitable for formations, so he decided to use them. Freeze! With a low shout, the first dragon-shaking pillar directly fell. Immediately, the ground trembled and faint dragon roars spread through the entire Northern Light City. For a moment, many disciples looked over curiously. However, they were unable to see anything and were completely at a loss. Soon after, Xiaoyang began hammering the 2nd and 3rd dragon vibrating pillars into the ground. The dragon-stirring pillar was extraordinary. After it landed on the ground, it seemed to have taken root and did not move at all. It could be said that it was naturally formed. When Xiaoyang nailed down the 3 dragon vibrating pillars, it was already dawn. It was obvious that he had spent a lot of time on it. After all, in order to make this formation perfect, the slightest mistake could not be tolerated. Therefore, Xiaoyang paid special attention to this aspect to avoid these small mistakes. Many curious disciples began to approach the center, wanting to know what was going on. However, they were all stopped. The news about Northern Light City began to spread rapidly throughout the upper realm. Because of Xiaoyang, Northern Light City could now be said to be the center of the drifting cloud boundary. Even the slightest disturbance here was enough to shake the entire drifting cloud boundary. Among them, there was no lack of people who wanted to come to this place, no matter what. This also reflected the terror of Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing. Even though the Northern Light City's reputation was constantly growing, the people who could enter here every day were still perfectly controlled. After resting for a while, Xiao Yang continued his work and began hammering in the 4th and 5th pillars. The dragon vibrating pillars continued to be hammered into the ground. As the formations in other places began to be gradually perfected, the spiritual energy began to gradually change its direction under the influence of these external objects. The framework of the formation began to gradually appear, and the forces of attraction were constantly alternating with each other. For a moment, even some disciples felt a great change. They were even a little frightened. Could it be that Northern Light City had provoked the wrath of the heavens? There were too many speculations about what had happened in the past few days. However, no one explained it to Sun Yukai, because in Sun Yotsai's opinion, there was no need to make it clear. After all, before the completion of the formation, the fewer people who knew, the better, so as to avoid any trouble. After 2 days, the spiritual energy in Northern Light City had returned to normal. The matter of Arctic Gray Feather, Old Master Xiao, and the others had also come to an end. Everyone could be said to be fully focused. Under such circumstances, there was not the slightest problem. This made Xiao Yang very happy because he knew very well that everyone had put in a lot of mental energy, which was why it was like this. When Xiao Yang was about to hammer in the last dragon vibrating pillar, he realized that the repulsion was very obvious. He almost couldn't hammer it in. Given Xiao Yang's strength, if he forcefully hammered it in, it wouldn't be a problem. However, if he did that, he was afraid that the incomplete formation would be destroyed in an instant. Even the dragon vibrating pillar would be damaged. What exactly is the problem? Xiao Yang mumbled with a serious expression. Then, Xiao Yang stopped hammering. Using his senses, he realized that the bald man's progress seemed to be a little slow. This was because the bald man was alone. Although his cultivation level was higher, under such circumstances where he couldn't afford to make any mistakes, his progress was naturally much slower. It wasn't that the bald man was slacking off, but that he had put in too much effort. He had done every detail perfectly. Gradually, Old Master Xiao and Lin Shiyun arrived. When they found out that the bald man wasn't done yet, they immediately rushed over to help him complete the last few details. The next morning, after sensing that the bald man was done, Xiao Yang hammered in the 9th dragon vibrating pillar. Instantly, the heavenly circulation formation was more than half completed. The formation began to circulate, and the spiritual energy in Northern Light City was restored. Furthermore, it became very regular. It could be said that the only thing the heavenly cycle orderly formation lacked was the final step. However, Xiao Yang wasn't in a hurry. He was still waiting for the right time. The timing of the activation of the formation had something to do with timing. If it was used well, it could increase the effectiveness of the formation and even prolong its duration. Gradually, the most important few people also arrived one after another. Sun Yukai was the last to arrive. He only arrived when it was close to noon. Chapter 1992. Boss, I'm really sorry. I've dragged you guys down, the Baldy said with some embarrassment. Xiao Yang shook his head and said, I miscalculated. I thought that you were more capable, so I arranged more work for you. When the Baldy heard this, he shook his head. He didn't think much of it. To be able to give him such important work, it was clear that he was trusted. As an outsider, he had joined the Flowing Cloud Realm and was able to participate in such an important matter. This made the Baldy feel very happy. It could be said that when the Baldy and Chen Mingho were fighting the cultivators of the mysterious Dou world, no one treated them as outsiders. Instead, they were a little concerned about it in their hearts. They were even careful, afraid that a mistake would occur. Qi and Guangqi felt the mystery of this array formation. He took a deep breath and said, It's really hard to imagine such a big hand. Once the array formation is activated, it will be a grand occasion. As the person who had set up the array formation, Qian Guangqi naturally knew that this time it could be said that he had put in a lot of effort. He had personally buried a few sacred grade Dharma artifacts as the foundation of the array formation. The number of treasures he had used was also innumerable. Although the amount of spirit qi that had been added to the North Light City wasn't much, he knew very well in his heart that what was missing was just the finishing touch. Old Master Shao and the others didn't say anything, because they were all waiting for the arrival of that moment. Sun Yukai, on the other hand, stood there quietly. He was also feeling the mysteries within. However, because he didn't have any talent in this aspect, what he could gain was really too little. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, noon arrived. At this time, everyone also felt that the spirit qi had begun to change. It was like a tide, undulating and undulating. At this time, Xiaoyang also moved. He took out the jade token and poured the power in his body into it continuously. For a moment, the jade token emitted an emerald light that made everyone feel relaxed and happy. They also felt that the power contained in the jade token was extremely pure and terrifying. In the blink of an eye, Xiaoyang removed the restriction on the jade token. Immediately, waves of spiritual qi swept out like waves. Even though he felt as if he was immersed in a sea of spiritual energy, it was extremely comfortable. Some people even started to absorb the spiritual qi to strengthen themselves. After the jade pendant rose into the air, it fell at an extremely fast speed. With a rumble, the jade pendant disappeared from the land. In the next moment, an even more majestic spirit qi swept out continuously. At the same time, they also felt that the formation was starting to operate at an extremely fast speed. It could be said that the fake spiritual vein sealed in the jade pendant in the heavenly cycle orderly formation was the finishing touch. As soon as the finishing touch was placed, the array was completely activated. Immediately, countless amounts of spiritual energy were released. Xiaoyang looked at it with satisfaction, and a smile appeared on his face. This was because it was extremely successful this time. With their concerted efforts, and without any mistakes, they completed this magnificent feat. Immediately, countless amounts of spiritual energy throbbed and rolled continuously. The density of the spiritual energy also underwent a huge change. In the blink of an eye, the spiritual energy became even more abundant. As for the jade pendant, it had already disappeared. Of course, that was because Xiaoyang had used a camouflage technique to conceal it, making it difficult for others to find it. After all, as the finishing touch, if it was destroyed, the heavenly cycle orderly formation would probably collapse. By then, the 100-year plan would be ruined. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the corners of Arctic Gray Feather's mouth twitched. He said, Xiaoyang really didn't lie. It's really 10 times denser. Qian Guangqi was so excited that he could not speak. He felt that the spiritual energy was continuously flowing into his body. It was extremely comfortable. The Shao clan's great-grandfather couldn't help but start to tremble. Such a thing could be said to be unheard of and unseen. He did not expect that he would be so lucky to see such a big thing. The bald man was even more excited. He had traveled to many places and had also been to some worlds that were blessed by nature. However, he had never seen such dense spiritual energy. Amazing! Although Qian Guangqi had a lot to say, in the end that was all he could say. That was because those beautiful words were not enough to describe such a grand occasion. With their feet as the center, spiritual energy began to engulf the entire North Light City. Gray Feather, protect me. I'm going to break through. As Qian Guangqi spoke, he directly sat on the ground and began his breakthrough. Arctic Gray Feather smiled. In a place like this, why would there be a need for protection? With Xiaoyang here, who would dare to come and offend them? Now is a rare opportunity. Hurry up and cultivate. Don't miss it. Xiaoyang said in a deep voice. The first wave of spiritual energy that was emitted could be said to be the purest. If they could completely absorb it, they would benefit greatly. Hearing this, everyone immediately sat on the ground and began to cultivate. Such a great opportunity, if they really missed it, it would not be worth it. Moreover, with Xiao Yang's protection, there would be no worries. Sun Yukai hesitated for a moment and also sat on the ground. Under such a big flow, if they did not cherish it, it would be a waste. When Xiaoyang saw that everyone had begun to cultivate, he was fully alert and guarded against the surroundings to prevent anyone from intruding and disturbing their cultivation. As the spiritual energy swept out, the disciples in North Light City who did not know anything were immediately shocked. They did not know what was going on, but such a dense spiritual energy made them feel very comfortable. Moreover, the density of the spiritual energy was still increasing, which made them feel even more excited. Many people also recalled some of the things that happened before and were even more shocked. Some people even knelt on the ground. They felt that this was all given to them by City Lord Xiaoyang. He was not only like a savior, but also their teacher who was doing his best to give them the best things. City Lord Xiaoyang, that imposing figure, could be said to be a lot higher in the hearts of everyone in North Light City. He was like a godlike existence, constantly creating miracles, causing others to be dumbfounded and willingly submit to him. Soon, Sun Yukai, who had been stagnant in King Wu's third rank for a long time, also began to break through. Chapter 1993. Seeing that Qin Guangqi and Sun Yukai had begun to break through their realms, Xiaoyang was also very happy. This was because they had always been the backbone of North Light City. Xiao Yang's ability determined the upper limit of North Light City, while Qin Guangqi and the others determined the lower limit. It could be said that they were all indispensable existences. If anyone was missing, it would be impossible for North Light City to develop to its current level of prosperity. Regarding this, Xiaoyang also focused his attention. He was also carefully observing the changes in the surroundings to avoid any problems that might cause them to fail their breakthroughs. Fortunately, this place had long been listed as a forbidden area by Sun Yukai, so no one dared to rashly come to investigate. Although some people had long been restless and wanted to come over to see what was going on, they still suppressed those thoughts in the end. The entire North Light City was quickly enveloped by the universal circulation formation. It could be said that at this moment, the spiritual energy in every place had reached an extremely dense level. For a moment, there were even many people who found it difficult to adapt to this sudden, monstrous opportunity. This feeling could be said to be unprecedented. There had never been a time more exciting than now. Even the bottlenecks that some people had been puzzled about for a long time began to loosen up. For a moment, it could be said that countless disciples began to cultivate in seclusion. This was because it was simply too rare for them. They did not know how long this dense spiritual energy could last. Perhaps it would disappear in the next moment. Therefore, they were bound to seize this opportunity. After all, it could not be missed. It would not come again. This also led to countless disciples in North Light City beginning to break through their realms. It could be said that there was an endless stream of people advancing one after another. This time for North Light City, it was completely a big year. Because of the appearance of the universal circulation formation, countless people benefited greatly. It could be said that the dense spiritual energy was like a flood, helping them forcefully break through the bottleneck that had been accumulating for a long time. The originally bustling North Light City became very quiet at this moment. However, what followed was a series of tyrannical auras that were constantly erupting. As the cultivators broke through their own realm, the atmosphere of the North Light City also began to undergo a great change. Xiaoyang could feel that there were many disciples breaking through in various places. It could be said that almost a third of the people had received the benefits of this opportunity and successfully broke through to the next level. And among them, there was no lack of King Wu's realm. Those below King Wu's level would break through directly. Those with lower levels would even break through a few levels consecutively. That could be said to be a lot of people. Soon, Qian Guangqi completed his breakthrough. He exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and looked at the people around him. The smile on his face became much wider. It could be said that among their group he was the person who broke through the fastest after Xiaoyang. In the end, he was faster than Arctic Grey Feather and stepped into the ranks of King Wu's rank 7. Although Arctic Grey Feather was very excited now, he did not get carried away or make a fuss because of this. Instead, he kept suppressing the excitement in his heart, afraid to disturb the cultivation of his comrades. Soon after, Sun Yukai also broke through to King Wu's rank 4. He did not continue to cultivate, but instead felt the power and benefits of the new realm. This situation made Sun Yukai very satisfied in his heart. Previously, Xiaoyang said that he wanted to improve their aptitude and make their realm higher. He originally thought that it would be impossible to improve too much, but now it seemed that there was still hope. For Sun Yukai, based on the elixirs and treasures that Xiaoyang gave him, in addition to the current situation of the North Light City, even King Wu's rank 8 seemed like an extravagant hope to him. However, Sun Yukai did not know that if he could show enough value, he could even fight for the martial emperor realm after going to the middle world. Although it was inevitable that there would be some difficulties, such an opportunity was still worth a try. Suddenly, everyone felt an extremely powerful fluctuation sweeping over. They all looked over and found that it was Chen Mingho's residence. I didn't expect Chen Mingho to step into King Wu's rank 9 so quickly. It seems that our North Light City can be considered to be unrivaled in the drifting cloud world. Sun Yukai said with a smile, not to mention Xiaoyang. King Wu's rank 9 had Chen Mingho, Baldi was rank 8, and Qian Guangqi had also stepped into rank 7. As a result, the strength of the North Light City could be said to be very smooth. Even though the Taiyang sect and Taiyin sect had ancestors who were rank 9 powerhouses, rank 7 and rank 8 powerhouses were almost empty. Now, even without Xiaoyang's existence, Sun Yukai was confident that he could dominate the drifting cloud world. Xiaoyang also revealed a very satisfied smile. It seemed that the array formation this time was rather timely. It could be said that Chen Mingho's desire to win had led him to forcefully break through, which was originally a little lacking. However, the appearance of the universal orbit array could be said to have given him a push, allowing him to successfully step into King Wu's rank 9. If Chen Mingho had failed to break through to King Wu's rank 9 this time, the difficulty in the future would have increased by at least 10 times. If his confidence was damaged, it would be difficult for him to take half a step into rank 9 for the rest of his life. The heavenly cycle order formation was like a timely rain that saved Chen Mingho's life. Chen Mingho himself also realized this point, and his face was already covered in tears. He had originally thought that everything was about to be destroyed, but who would have thought that this timely rain would successfully pull him back and help him break through? Chen Mingho slowly stood up and bowed in the direction of Xiaoyang. It could be said that Xiaoyang was the person who taught him the Tao. If it hadn't been for Xiaoyang, he was afraid that he would never have been able to experience the glory of King Wu's rank 9 in this lifetime. As countless disciples of the North Light City broke through one after another, many people were immersed in joy. In their opinion, this was all because the city lord was so powerful that he was able to give them such an opportunity. That imposing figure could be said to be like a deity. There were still many people who were still in shock. They didn't dare to believe that everything that had happened before their eyes was real. Because so many disciples had broken through one after another, the spirit energy in this place had become so dense. This was unimaginable. Chapter 1994. Something big had happened in the flowing cloud world. The spirit chi in North Light City had suddenly become 10 times denser. Countless disciples had obtained their own fortuitous encounters and continuously broke through. It could be said that their overall strength had suddenly increased by a level. Furthermore, a new rank 9 powerhouse had been born because of this. There were even rumors that Baldy had gone into seclusion because of this, preparing to break through to King Wu's rank 9. If he succeeded, North Light City would have 3 King Wu's rank 9 powerhouses. Just how terrifying would that be? At that time, even if all the other sects in the flowing cloud world worked together, they still wouldn't be able to compare to North Light City's power. Some sects further away felt that it was just a rumor. How could such a thing happen? No matter how they thought about it, it was unrealistic. However, those sects that were closer were even more shocked after hearing about it. They found it hard to believe. This was the truth. Such a heaven-defying move naturally came from City Lord Shao, the current #1 person in the flowing cloud world. Although some people had gone to take a look and knew what the truth was, they still couldn't believe it. This was filled with too many fantasies. It was something they didn't even dare to imagine normally. Within a small room in the extreme Yang sect, Mu Yang was still engrossed in reading ancient books. When a junior came to report what had happened in North Light City, Mu Yang was also shocked. The book in his hand fell onto the chopping board. His entire being was stunned because of this. This was indeed unbelievable. Even Mu Yang, who had wandered through countless worlds, found it hard to believe. Although when they were traveling together, Xiaoyang had mentioned a few words, he had only laughed it off. He felt that this young man's ambition was too high, but now he had done it. This made Mu Yang very shocked. This kid, he really knows how to surprise people. Mu Yang bitterly smiled as he shook his head and said with a smile, this was a good thing. Although there wasn't much for the extreme Yang sect, the strength of North Light City was the strength of the flowing cloud world. The extreme Yang sect leader saw that the old ancestor was only shocked by this matter and didn't say anything about it. He was very anxious. In the future, the Northern Light City would truly be a gigantic existence, unshakable. Could it be that they were still not thinking of a way to stop this dominant situation? The lunar sect was now facing the same problem, so the sect master had immediately sought out First Lunar. It could be said that the sect masters of these two sects hoped that the patriarch could improve the situation. Originally, their two sects used to be peak existences in the flowing cloud boundary, but now they were surpassed by the newly born Northern Light City, so they naturally felt a little awkward in their hearts. Can you teach me how to change this situation? Chu Taiyin asked with interest. Although Chu Taiyin was also very shocked, after thinking about some of the words that Xiaoyang had said to him before, it didn't seem strange now. The lunar sect leader knelt on the ground, his expression extremely ugly. How could he explain this matter clearly? If I had a way, I wouldn't have come here to ask you, ancestor. Xiao family's patriarch was unusually excited after hearing this news. Because Xiaoyang was a descendant of the Xiao family, it could be said that they were bound together for good or ill. The Dark Knight, Sacred Ground's Holy Lord had a strange expression, and no one could tell what he was thinking. All along, the Dark Knight, Sacred Ground, and Northern Light City's cooperation had been quite close. Regarding this matter, he also had his own opinion. It seems that the flowing cloud boundary is really going to change. Fei Yi smiled bitterly and said, back then the upper realm was an era when several sects shared the limelight equally. But now times had changed. With this move, that new force could be said to be the most stable and independent force in the upper realm. No one could shake it. The Holy Lord nodded and said, this is good. When the time comes, even if the sky falls, there will be tall people to hold it up. Hearing this, Fei Yi also laughed. It was the same logic. In the future, when they went out to train, the Dark Knight Sacred Ground could be said to have a protective umbrella, and that was Northern Light City. The expressions of Yi Shi-san, Yi 19, and the other disciples also changed. Everyone's thoughts were different. However, everyone was sincerely convinced by Xiaoyang. They felt that he deserved it for being able to reach this step today. When they were traveling together, he had put his own life and death aside to train. Profound battle world. With Xiaoyang's departure, The situation had stabilized under Ouyang Cheng's Great Suppression. Those worlds that were originally enslaved had also regained their freedom. It wasn't that Ouyang Cheng didn't have the ability to continue controlling it, but in this troubled period where his vitality was greatly damaged, he still needed to shrink his strength and keep a low profile. If a second or third Xiaoyang appeared, then the profound battle world would really be finished. Although they had given up many things, the cultivators of the other worlds had already evacuated. The originally turbulent, profound battle world had temporarily returned to stability. This time, Ouyang Cheng came to sacred Jade Mountain. He looked at the devastation below and felt countless emotions in his heart. Now he had become the common master of the profound battle world. But whether it was reputation or prestige, there was still a difference between him and the first one. It was even a world of difference. All of a sudden, Ouyang Cheng felt a powerful aura rapidly approaching him. When Ouyang Cheng was about to counterattack, his entire body had no strength. He was grabbed by the neck and lifted up like a chicken, effortlessly. That person used some unknown method. Ouyang Cheng couldn't see what the other party looked like for a moment. Could it be that the second Xiaoyang has appeared so soon? Ouyang Cheng thought in his heart and complained incessantly. In the past, the profound battle world was too overbearing. It had enslaved many worlds and had also offended many people. Now that some people with the ability to seek revenge had appeared, it was naturally a normal thing. However, this frequency had come a little too fast. Ouyang Cheng's heart was also very unhappy. No matter what, he was the common master of a world. In the end, he was being controlled by others. How could he feel comfortable? However, he didn't have the ability to resist. This was also the most helpless thing in Ouyang Cheng's heart. How terrifying was this person's strength? I heard that a young man called Xiaoyang came some time ago. Is he from the flowing cloud world? A strange voice slowly said. Chapter 1995. A few days later, North Light City gradually regained its tranquility, and the original storm also gradually subsided. Sun Yukai also stood up for the first time and gave an explanation to everyone in Northern Light City, and also explained the wonders of this array. And this spirit chi became denser, and as long as the formation wasn't destroyed, then it would be like this for the next 100 years. After this news spread out, all of the disciples in the North Light City immediately cheered and jumped for joy. This 100 years of favorable environment was enough for them to go further. As for those who weren't able to join the Northern Light City, they were extremely pained and felt that they had missed out on this great opportunity. North Light City also introduced a series of new policies because of this change. For example, in the aspect of selecting disciples, it became a lot more harsh. There were requirements for aptitude, and similarly, the requirements for character were even stricter. Because, in Xiaoyang's view, the current North Light City only needed time to raise its overall strength to Qingwu level 6. At that time, what they would lack wouldn't be talented disciples, but people with good character who could help the Northern Light City. At the same time, there was a lot of news that Qin Mingho had successfully come out of seclusion, and Baldi was in seclusion to break through to the next realm. Even old Master Xiao, Lin Shiyin, and Arctic Grey Feather had already gone into seclusion, obviously to break through to a higher realm. So now, it could be said that North Light City was shouldered by Sun Yukai alone. However, under so many things, everything was proceeding in an orderly manner, and there wasn't the slightest mistake. This was Sun Yukai. He had the ability to deal with a myriad of affairs every day. Although it was a lot more difficult than usual, he was very happy in his heart. After Chen Mingho came out of seclusion, although he also helped Sun Yukai deal with things, he, who was born as a bandit, was still somewhat powerless in front of North Light City, which had a huge population base. This time, the overall strength of North Light City rose a level because of this, which made Xiaoyang very satisfied. Of course, what made him even happier was that Xiao Man had actually made consecutive breakthroughs. Now, she had even reached the 5th level of Qingwu. It was not an exaggeration to say that she had made rapid progress. Xiao Yang sat on a rattan chair in his courtyard and gently rocked back and forth while Xiao Man fanned himself. It could be said that he was extremely comfortable. Sun Yukai, on the other hand, was reporting the changes in Aurora City in the past few days. How many disciples had broken through to the next realm, or how outstanding the performance of those disciples was under the general trend this time, and could be heavily nurtured. Over the past few days, the various upper-level sects had sent congratulatory gifts one after another. With Xiao Yang's support, Sun Yukai could be said to be rich and overbearing in return, using this method to buy people's hearts. Let the various sects know that as long as they followed Xiao Yang, there would naturally be great benefits. Sun Yukai was very good at these things. He dealt with all aspects and did not favor one and discriminate against the other. "Well done," Xiao Yang said with a smile. Sun Yukai only nodded slightly. In his opinion, this was just some of the things that he should do. "Look at those letters. Is it time to send them out now?" Xiao Yang asked. Sun Yukai was stunned when he heard this. He did not expect that the city lord would actually ask for his opinion in this aspect. Sun Yukai naturally knew why such a big matter was discussed. It was to form an alliance with the God Realm and become a middle-level world. In this subordinate's opinion, this matter should be done sooner rather than later. After all, the later they know, the harder it may be for them to accept it. "But if we don't succeed, this may also be seen as a joke," Sun Yukai said. Xiao Yang nodded his head, slightly. He was naturally aware of the logic behind this. Whether or not they could form an alliance with the God Realm was still unknown. In a situation where luck was limited, if Xiao Yang did not fall in the martial emperor realm, it would not be enough to describe it as harder than ascending to the heavens if he wanted to step into the next realm. Sun Yukai took a deep breath and continued. "But we must strike while the iron is hot. Our Northern Light city's spiritual energy has increased greatly because of the universal order formation this time. Our reputation is unparalleled. If we point our finger, I'm afraid countless people will flock to us." Sun Yukai was very confident about this. If they were willing, it would not be difficult for them to conquer the drifting cloud world by force. It was just that they were not willing to take this step. "All right, then I'll leave this matter to you," Xiao Yang said with a smile. When these words came out, Sun Yotsai's body could not help but tremble subconsciously. Such a big matter was handed to him? Then I'll set the time for half a month later. How about it? Sun Yukai asked carefully. At the same time, he felt a little helpless. Xiao Yang was really a hands-off boss. He really did not worry at all. He wanted them to do everything. Xiao Yang nodded and said, "It's settled then." "Understood." Sun Yukai responded, then left. This time, most of the upper realm sects were invited. This was a little troublesome for Sun Yukai. This matter was very important. If he started talking about it now, he could not help but feel a little impetuous. However, when it came to the last minute, he was afraid that there would be unforeseen events. But Sun Yukai was very confident that within the stipulated time, their city lord would definitely be able to meet the requirements of the God Realms Alliance. The letter had been prepared long ago, but Sun Yukai was still a little worried. After checking it carefully and confirming that there were no mistakes, he ordered people to send the letter out. Xiao Yang, on the other hand, continued to stay in his own courtyard, living a very leisurely life. "Xiao Man, do you want to always follow me?" Xiao Yang suddenly asked. When Xiao Man heard this, she was stunned for a moment. Then she looked like she was about to cry and said, "Of course, Xiao Man wants to always follow you, young master. Otherwise, how could I work so hard to ascend to the upper realm? I also want you to always be by my side. But if this goes on, I'm afraid that when the time comes, we'll still be chasing each other," Xiao Yang said. After hearing this, Lil Man's mood became very low. When Xiao Yang ascended, she also cultivated for a long time in the middle realm before ascending. However, the gap between them was still extremely huge. "So, Xiao Man, You have to work harder in the future. I have many methods here. You have to choose carefully, Xiaoyang said with a sigh. Chapter 1996. Xiao Man also knew that her young master would definitely not be limited to this place. For example, when they were in the lower stream realm, they were always going higher. And the upper stream realm was definitely not the end of the young master, and his end was probably somewhere even higher. Lil Man didn't refuse this, and he started to carefully select the treasures. Whether or not she could always follow the young master depended on whether she was strong enough. When the letters were sent out from Northern Light City, it immediately caused a huge uproar, because the arrival of this letter also made them realize that Xiaoyang was probably no longer satisfied with being first, and even wanted more things. And such petty thoughts were naturally mostly from small sects and people who did not understand Xiaoyang. It had always been like this to measure the heart of a gentleman with one's own yardstick. On the other hand, some people who were close to him felt that this was nothing. There was a portion of people who also felt that with Xiaoyang's current strength and achievements, it was enough to become the emperor of the flowing cloud realm. Even if he climbed high and raised his arm, he would be an existence that hundreds of people would respond to. No matter which point it was, he was qualified. However, these were merely guesses. As for what the important matters mentioned in the letter were, they would only be able to find out after arriving at the North Light City. Rather than speculating here, it was better to go and take a look. Moreover, after hearing that the Northern Light City had undergone earth-shattering changes, who would not be curious and not want to take a look? Right now was a great opportunity that would not come again if missed. They also did not think that Northern Light City would still do some dirty things today. As many people continued to enter Northern Light City, Sun Yukai also received and arranged for them one by one. When these people asked about Xiaoyang's situation and when they could meet, they all responded appropriately. When the time came, they would naturally be able to meet. As for now, City Lord Xiao was cultivating in seclusion, and he did not want to disturb him. Because Sun Yukai was in charge of Northern Light City when it was first established, no one made things difficult for him. Of course, they also knew that they did not have the ability to make things difficult for him. Since they were unable to meet him, the cultivators who had arrived earlier simply went into seclusion to cultivate. Seeing was believing. They knew that everything was real and not empty words. Therefore, under such a great opportunity, he naturally couldn't miss it. Some who had been stuck at the bottleneck for a long time even took advantage of this opportunity to break through. Xiao, family Xiao Chongsheng, and Xiao Dahai came to North Light City after coming out of seclusion, because they knew that it was inconvenient for this junior to show himself now. The two of them did not exercise their authority and still obediently waited in the place arranged by Sun Yukai. During this period of time, there were quite a few people who came to Xiao Chongsheng's door in hopes of getting to know the supreme expert. After all, level 9 cultivators were at the peak of existence in the flowing cloud world. In addition to the relationship between Xiao Chongsheng and Xiaoyang, that was an existence that everyone wanted to climb up to. When it was almost time, Muyang finally arrived at Northern Light City. As soon as he entered the city, Muyang saw First Lunar. Uncle Muyang, what do you think of such a big thing happening this time? First Lunar asked in a low voice. Muyang shook his head. What else can I think of? I was just sitting there and watching. Chu Tain could only smile bitterly in his heart at Senior Muyang's sloppy attitude. But speaking of which, he had always been like this. However, this also meant that Muyang knew nothing about this. As such, under such a situation, they could not do anything. Even if they did, they would not be able to change the situation. Previously, Daoist Xiao gave me some information, saying that the flowing cloud realm will reach a higher level. Uncle, do you know what the situation is? Chu Tain didn't give up and continued to ask, wanting to find out more information. Muyang shrugged and said, If I knew, why would I only be here now? Chu Tain felt very helpless when she saw Lin Yun's clueless look. It seemed that it was impossible to get anything out of him now. Immediately, First Lunar changed the topic to the punitive expedition to the profound fighting world. Mu Yang was quite sincere about this, and he told him everything he knew without holding back. First Lunar had always been a junior that Mu Yang admired. If he told him about the situation in the profound fighting world, it would not be bad if he could provide some help. As the two of them chatted and laughed, they arrived at the city lord's mansion. Another day passed, and Sun Yukai sent people to invite the representatives of the various sects to the discussion hall. In order to avoid any accidents, even Chun Mingho and Qian Guangqi personally came. In terms of hospitality, Northern Light City was very warm and did not show any neglect. Many people were convinced by this point. All this time, which large sect had always looked down on small sects like them. However, although they did not understand why Northern Light City was so kind, they were very grateful for the respect they received. As they took their seats one by one, they began to discuss in low voices. They wanted to know what they were going to discuss this time around. Sun Yukai stood outside with a faint smile on his face, and his response was very appropriate. Even when facing people like Mu Yang and Chu Taiyin, he was neither servile nor overbearing. He displayed his identity as the master of this place without the slightest bit of disrespect. After everyone had arrived, Xiaoyang also appeared. He had purposely been the last to appear. If he had arrived early, he would have been greeted by these people, which would have been a headache. City Lord, except for some small sects who did not come because of other matters, most of them have arrived, Sun Yukai reported with a smile. Xiaoyang nodded slightly and said, "Let's go together." For such a big matter, it is enough for the subordinate to know. "There is no need for me to participate," Sun Yukai said. Xiaoyang was slightly surprised, but seeing that Sun Yukai was very insistent, he did not force him. All along, Sun Yukai had been very sensible. As such, he felt that there was no need for him to attend the first meeting. Immediately, Xiaoyang walked into the discussion hall and went directly to the main seat, cupping his hands and saying, "Thank you all for giving me face and coming to Northern Light City to discuss this matter." City Lord Xiao. Everyone immediately cupped their hands in return. Chapter 1997. After exchanging some pleasantries, Xiaoyang gestured for everyone to sit down and talk. Mu Yang tilted his head and looked at Xiaoyang curiously. When he returned from the profound fighting world, this kid had already said that there was something that he would know about when the time came. Could it be that now was the time? Moreover, almost all the important people of the sects were gathered here. It was a big deal. If it wasn't for Xiaoyang's invitation, Mu Yang wouldn't have come here. After all, the extreme Yang sect had a sect master now. "Everyone, there is only one reason why I have invited all of you here, and that is for our drifting cloud world to become a medium world," Xiaoyang said. Once he said that, many people looked at each other. There were many people who didn't understand what he meant. They didn't understand what he meant. There were very few people who knew about the 3,000 small worlds becoming a medium world. The flowing cloud world was relatively backward and isolated. Therefore, it was normal that they didn't know about it. Then, Xiaoyang explained the principle behind it again. It was like the difference between the lower realm and the upper realm. However, the difference was that before it was cultivators who ascended. This time, they wanted the entire world to become a medium world. After listening to Xiaoyang's explanation, many people were shocked. They also realized that their previous knowledge was indeed too shallow. "City Master Xiao, according to what you said, the flowing cloud world isn't the best among the 3,000 small worlds. How are we going to become a medium world?" A sect master asked worriedly. This question could be said to have raised the doubts of countless people. Many people looked at Xiaoyang without blinking. They were very curious about this. A medium world was naturally much stronger than a small world. When the time came, even if they were lucky enough to become a medium world, wouldn't they continue to be bullied? "Everyone, there's no need to worry about this. I've already discussed this with the God Emperor when I was in the God Realm. Furthermore, we've even reached an agreement to mutually benefit each other," Xiaoyang said with a smile. Now, it could be said that a stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. if they could form an alliance with the strongest of the 3,000 small worlds, then all the problems would no longer be a problem. At least in the eyes of many people, with the God realm as an ally, there was nothing to fear. Mu Yang and Chu Tain, on the other hand, were not as excited. They had been traveling outside for a long time, so they knew that things were not that simple. Mutual benefit. What benefits could the flowing cloud realm bring to the God realm? The doubts in Chu Tain's heart were resolved. He understood why Xiaoyang was in such a hurry to help them increase their cultivation after returning from the God realm. Presumably, it was to prepare for the promotion of a medium world. Mu Yang, on the other hand, was lying on the table, not caring about his image at all. He tapped his fingers lightly as he pondered this question. Xiao Changsheng, on the other hand, had a solemn expression. The higher one's cultivation level, the more things one could see. If all of this was said to be too perfect, then it would be unreal. Of course, we are willing to do such a good thing. A representative from a second-rate sect said. With the first person speaking, a second and third person followed suit. Then Xiaoyang suppressed it and said, however, in order to form this alliance, there is a prerequisite. That is, I have to become a martial emperor before it can take effect. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present was shocked. Naturally, they had heard of the martial emperor realm before. However, to them it was a realm that only existed in legends. It was said that in the 3,000 small worlds, there were only a handful of martial emperors. Even the number 1 martial emperor realm could be counted with one's fingers. Hearing this, Mu Yang's eyebrows twitched. Many doubts in his mind suddenly became clear. Why was Xiaoyang so determined to break through to the martial emperor realm? It was most likely because he wanted to activate this alliance and ascend to a medium world with the God realm. Such an idea was indeed very bold. However, the chances of success were very small. Cultivator Xiao, how confident are you in activating this alliance? Holy Lord of Dark Night asked worriedly. Whether or not this alliance could take effect was the most important point. Everyone also looked at Xiaoyang, and they were also very eager to know the answer. Because the fortune of the 3,000 small worlds is limited, the fortune of the martial emperor realm has already been taken by the experts of each world. Therefore, if I want to break through to the martial emperor realm, logically speaking, I have less than a 10% chance. Xiaoyang smiled bitterly and said helplessly. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. If this was really the case, it would be almost impossible to succeed. You want to ascend to the middle realm. You want to go to a bigger stage and obtain more luck. You want to change the barren state of the flowing cloud realm. As Mu Yang spoke, he slowly stood up. Xiaoyang only nodded and did not speak. This was also the greatest thing he could do to repay the flowing cloud world. If that's the case, then you are doing everything for the flowing cloud world. Mu Yang admires you. As Mu Yang spoke, he bowed and cupped his hands. Back then, Mu Yang was so angry that he killed his way into the demon world. He wanted to give the flowing cloud world a stable environment so that it would become more prosperous without war. His wish had been realized by this young man. Now, this young man wanted to bring the flowing cloud world to a higher place. How could he not be impressed? Now, Mu Yang had a whole new level of respect for Xiaoyang. He admired him so much that he wanted to prostrate himself before him. Seeing Mu Yang's great reaction, everyone was full of praise in their hearts. As expected of the savior of the flowing cloud world, his breadth of mind and ability left others in the dust. Even though you know that there isn't much of a chance, you still want to try. That's why you didn't hesitate to give me the precious pill. Chu Tain said with a smile. They were all indebted to Xiaoyang, so of course they knew him better. His actions made their blood boil. They felt that they should give it a try. I, Chu Tain, will lead the Tain sect to follow city Lord Zhao's lead. Chu Tain cupped his hands and expressed his attitude. Mu Yang also smiled and said, Although I can't represent the Taiyang sect, I still want to go with you. If you don't try, then you won't have another chance." Seeing that the two patriarchs of the extreme Yang sect and the lunar sect had already expressed their stance, the other sects also began to feel more confident in their hearts. Chapter 1998. Things were progressing so smoothly that Xiaoyang wasn't used to it. The Anya clan is willing to listen to City Master Zhao's orders. Holy Lord of Dark Night immediately expressed his attitude. The three great powers from before were now willing to help Xiaoyang complete this feat. The others also began to express their willingness to follow Xiaoyang and work together to help the flowing cloud realm become a medium realm. Hearing the responses, Xiaoyang's lips curled into a smile. He was extremely carefree. If the flowing cloud realm could unite like this, then what couldn't be done? After a while, Xiaoyang pressed down with his hand, indicating for everyone to quiet down. Then Xiaoyang stood up and clasped his hands. "Since everyone trusts me so much, I naturally won't disappoint everyone. Even if we can't form an alliance with the God Realm and ascend together, I, Xiaoyang, will still push the flowing cloud realm into the 3,000 middle realms." When everyone heard this, they became even more excited. Because Xiaoyang had created too many miracles, they all trusted this young man. He definitely could do it. It definitely wasn't as simple as just saying. The smile on Xiao Changxing's face grew wider and wider. He wasn't angry because this junior didn't inform him of this matter beforehand. Instead, he felt that if he could really accomplish this feat, then the flowing cloud realm would welcome an earth-shattering change. At that time, this place wouldn't continue to be barren. Since everyone has reached a consensus, and Xiaoyang has taken the flowing cloud realm as his responsibility, then let's make him the leader of the flowing cloud realm. What do you think? Mu Yang smiled. When these words were spoken, everyone fell silent. However, everyone knew in their hearts that with Xiaoyang's strength and his contributions to the flowing cloud boundary, it was naturally possible for him to become the common lord. Moreover, no one could compare to him. "I agree." Holy Lord of Dark Night was the first to agree. "I agree." Chu Taiyin followed closely behind. They all knew Xiaoyang, so they knew what kind of person he was. Moreover, the drifting cloud world had always been independent. There were even conflicts between the various sections. These internal conflicts would only cause the strength of the drifting cloud world to decline. If there was one person who could rule the world, then everything would be much simpler. Moreover, Xiaoyang treated the flowing cloud realm well. Every time he obtained benefits, he would not leave them behind. Moreover, with such a leader, their benefits would only increase in the future. Xiao Changxing didn't express his opinion immediately because they were all members of a Xiao family, so they still needed to avoid arousing suspicion. After everyone thought it through, they all agreed that it was feasible. When Xiaoyang heard these voices, he couldn't help but feel a fire burning in his heart. For a moment, his lofty aspirations seemed to rise again at this moment. Mu Yang saw that the little guy was still a little flustered, and he knew that he had never thought about this before. However, since he had taken the lead, then the position of leader naturally belonged to him. Xiaoyang wanted to push the drifting cloud world into the 3,000 middle worlds, and as the leader, he naturally needed to have absolute authority and authority. Therefore, the position of leader was the most suitable. "Leader Xiao, are you going to continue being coy? Do you want us to persuade you a few more times before you are willing to accept the position of leader?" Mu Yang immediately said when he saw the situation. Xiaoyang waved his hand and said, "I don't have such thoughts." Chu Taiyin greets Leader Xiao. Chu Taiyin immediately cooperated with Mu Yang and bowed. "We greet Leader Xiao." When everyone saw this, they immediately bowed. Clearly, they all acknowledged Xiaoyang's position as leader. At the same time, they were even more certain that with Xiaoyang leading them, they could go even further. Seeing how excited everyone was, Xiaoyang did not decline. After all, it would be hypocritical for him to be humble in such a situation. It could be said that Xiao Yang became the master of the flowing cloud realm, and that was his responsibility. Although Mu Yang also had strength and prestige, he was of the older generation after all. Moreover, his achievements were still lacking. Of course, the most important point was that, in this matter, the one who took the lead was Xiao Yang, not Mu Yang. Thank you for your kindness. Xiao Yang will not let you down. Xiao Yang clasped his hands and bowed again. When Mu Yang heard this, he nodded his head in satisfaction. Although the matter of becoming a medium world was still far away, as long as they worked hard enough in the process. Even if they failed, the strength of the flowing cloud world would greatly increase as a result. Everyone, I still have to make things clear. The middle world is 10 times stronger than our small world. When the time comes, if we are lucky enough to go, the danger we will face will be even more severe. Xiao Yang signaled for everyone to be quiet and immediately added. Instantly, many people were speechless. If they were unlucky and encountered another demon world in the middle world, how could they resist? That is indeed the case. That is why we need to work hard during this period of time. Only when our fists are strong will we have the right to speak. Moreover, we have an alliance with the God world. We are not alone. Mu Yang said. When he said this, many people's doubts were dispelled. If we cower and don't dare to advance because of a few dangerous situations, we might as well go home and sleep. We cultivators have always defied the heavens. Chu Taiyin said. Faced with these words, Xiao Yang smiled and nodded his head. Xiao Yang was very happy that the two of them were speaking up for him. With their help and guidance, the drifting cloud world would naturally be as stable as Mount Tai. Master Xiao, I wonder if the formation you set up in North Light City can be continued? Holy Lord of Dark Night asked. Everyone instantly perked up their ears. If it was really possible, then the strength of the drifting cloud world would naturally increase in the shortest time possible. At that time, there would be no need to worry so much. There is one thing in this formation. It is a gift from the God world, so I am unable to set up more. But everyone, don't worry. As long as there are talented disciples in the sect, they can all be sent here to cultivate. Although this formation was set up by me for North Light City, it also belongs to the drifting cloud world. Xiao Yang said. After hearing this, everyone became a lot more excited. In this way, if they could send the best disciples in the sect, they would also benefit a lot from it. Their realms would also advance by leaps and bounds. Chapter 1999. In an instant, everyone began to praise him. Leader Zhao's breadth of mind was truly extraordinary. They were also very satisfied in their hearts, as they had obtained the answer they wanted. Who wouldn't want their talented disciples to grow up in the shortest time possible? With Xiao Yang's words, there was naturally no problem. Moreover, Xiao Yang continued to say some things. That was, the things he had obtained from the profound fighting world would also be divided equally among the various sects. However, how much each sect would be able to obtain would depend on how much they had contributed to the flowing cloud world, how strong they were, and how many disciples they had. This was an extremely complicated problem, and Xiao Yang didn't go into detail about how to distribute it. He would leave this matter to Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing to handle. After all, these were things that the two of them were relatively good at. It could be said that other than this discussion, as long as it wasn't too important in the future, the two of them would make the final decision and help Xiao Yang deal with it. Immediately after, Mu Yang and Chu Taiyin were also recommended because their strength wasn't weak either. Some people also wanted to use this method to slightly restrain Xiao Yang, so that he wouldn't be able to control everything with one hand. Although Mu Yang and Chu Taiyin admired Xiao Yang very much, in their eyes, this was just the general trend. After all, no one was more qualified than Xiao Yang to be the leader of the flowing cloud world. Moreover, in these years, everything that Xiao Yang had done had indeed benefited the flowing cloud world greatly, and he had even obtained many benefits. Therefore, under such circumstances, the position of co-leader was left to him. Xiao Yang wasn't very interested in this. In fact, this position of leader was just an empty title in his eyes. If he really wanted to unify the resources of the flowing cloud world and develop together, he didn't have the energy to do so. On the contrary, Sun Yukai and Sun Dishing had the ability to do so. In the end, Mu Yang and Chu Taiyin were elected as co-managers to help Xiao Yang deal with matters, and they also had a lot of authority. The three of them were not very interested in these things. Their ambitions were the same, and that was to cultivate to a higher level. If they could help the flowing cloud realm at the same time, they were willing to do so. However, if they were asked to rack their brains, that would be too much for them. They discussed the details for an entire day. However, Xiao Yang had Sun Yukai replace him in the last 2 hours to make detailed arrangements. After all, many things had been finalized. As for what would happen next, it would depend on Sun Yotsai's deployment. After Xiao Yang returned to his courtyard, he was still sitting on the rattan chair, gently rocking back and forth. He seemed to be very comfortable. As for Xiao Man, she'd listened to Xiao Yang's suggestion and entered into closed-door cultivation once more. At the end of the day's meeting, the representatives of the various sects were very satisfied. This was because the prospects that Sun Yukai had laid out for them were very tempting. However, the meeting did not end there. Sun Yukai also said that there were still some details to be discussed, so there was no need to rush. The next day, Xiao Yang did not appear. Even the top figures like Mu Yang, Chu Taiyin, and Xiao Changxing did not attend. Instead, they let their sect leaders or family leaders discuss these details themselves. Xiao Yang sat in the courtyard and drank tea, enjoying this lazy and leisurely time. It was truly comfortable to be able to give these rights to people who could make him feel at ease. He didn't have to worry about those things. In terms of social interactions, there were the Sun family's 2 heroes. In terms of teaching disciples, there were Qi and Guangqi, Arctic Gray Feather, and the others. As for Xiao Yang as the backbone of everyone, what he needed to do was to continuously raise the bottom line of North Light City. It could be said that their division of labor was very clear. It was also because of this clarity that led to Borealis City's steady and prosperous development. Even though many people did not think highly of it when it was first established, it was still growing steadily. In the first few times that Xiao Yang went out to train, he did not bring back many things, and the things that could help Borealis City were pitifully few. However, Borealis City's progress did not stop and continued to move forward. However, this time, Xiao Yang brought back too many things. He was a bit worried that he would rush things to help them grow, so there were some things that he did not take out. He was prepared to wait. Fellow cultivator Xiao is in such a good mood that he is still drinking tea. Mu Yang said as he casually sat down. Mu Yang was someone who had reached the peak of the 9th step. This time, he had brought Chu Taiyin and Xiao Changxing with him. He could be said to be a peak existence in the flowing cloud world. As such, no one from Borealis City stopped them along the way. Xiao Yang had already sensed their arrival. He casually pointed and said, "Sit anywhere." The others did not stand on ceremony with Xiao Yang. They had only come to sit around casually. Leader Xiao is truly young and promising, Chu Taiyin exclaimed. However, the person in question only smiled. He did not have any opinion on this. Xiao Changsheng sat there. Although he had many questions in his heart, he did not ask them at this time. After all, there were some questions that could be asked in private. It would not be of much use to say it out loud. Can you tell us how confident fellow Taoist Xiao is? Chu Taiyin did not bother with small talk. He took a deep breath and asked in a serious tone. This was something he was quite concerned about. He is not very confident. He said before that the fortune has been completely taken by those old monsters. If he wants to achieve his goal, he might have to kill a martial emperor expert. Or perhaps, when they all go to the middle world, this fortune will naturally be empty. Mu Yang helped Xiao Yang answer this question. When Chu Taiyin heard this, he could not help but frown. He knew that if they had the support of the God realm, it would be a lot easier for them to reach the middle world. If they only relied on the strength of the flowing cloud world, it might be difficult. Therefore, Chu Taiyin was not very confident. However, I have been reading ancient books these days and found some clues. Perhaps we can help fellow Daoist Xiao reach an agreement without going down the wrong path, Muyang said after taking a deep breath. Chapter 2000. As soon as these words came out, it was like a sudden clap of thunder, shocking everyone present. Could it be that this old man had found some incredible ancient technique that could break this taboo? Although Chu Taiyin and Xiao Chongxing did not know much about providence, they had heard of it before. They had been to some places, so their knowledge of these things was naturally extraordinary. Furthermore, they knew how many clues and tricks were involved. If they could not rely on providence, what else could they do? The most excited person was Xiaoyang. It could be said that he had been thinking about this matter ever since he left the God realm. Moreover, he had been thinking of ways to change his current awkward situation. However, in the end, he could not come up with a solution. As he came from above, Xiaoyang knew the providence of this small world like the back of his hand. What he confirmed was why the talented Princess Mingzhu could not break through after so long. Was it because she wanted to enter the tomb of the gods? However, after coming out of the tomb of the gods, the God Emperor had said that Princess Mingzhu had not broken through. Although there were signs, there were still no signs after so many days. This made Xiaoyang feel very helpless. The providence was already saturated, so it was impossible to break through to the martial emperor realm with providence. If he tried to break through by force, he would be suppressed by the 3,000 small worlds, and the counterattack would be severe. Therefore, under these conditions, Xiaoyang also had a lot of helplessness. What method? Xiaoyang asked in a hurry. He really wanted to know what kind of technique could help him soar into the sky and reach an agreement. Muyang took out a few ancient books from his bosom and handed them to Xiaoyang. He said, "I flipped through countless ancient books and finally found a way. However, I don't know if it'll work." Those ancient books looked very old, and many parts of them were even damaged. The ancient books clearly state that if you can gain the recognition of the drifting cloud realm, you can be considered the true master of the drifting cloud realm, Muyang said in a deep voice. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. What did that mean? What was a true master? Hearing this, Xiaoyang raised his eyebrows. If this was the case, then some problems had become clear. In fact, everything was starting to become clear. It was no longer as blurry and confusing as before. Calling you master is a bit too much. If you obtain the recognition of the flowing cloud realm and combine your fate with it, you and the flowing cloud realm will become one. At that time, the luck of the two of you will be closely linked and complement each other. In other words, if you are strong, the flowing cloud world will prosper. If you do, you will be a burden to this world, Muyang said in a low voice. When he said this, Muyang's expression became extremely solemn. This was because he knew that if he told Xiaoyang about this, it would be a huge gamble. He bet that Xiaoyang would fight for Xiaoyang, and that the flowing cloud realm would become even stronger because of Xiaoyang. If that's the case, I will be able to take all of the luck of the flowing cloud realm, Xiaoyang said after taking a deep breath. If he took all of the luck of the flowing cloud realm and placed it on himself, then he could forcefully break through to the martial emperor realm. Even though it was extremely risky and there was no telling what kind of unimaginable accident would happen. However, it would only be possible if he tried. That is indeed the case, but at the same time you will need to return the favor to the flowing cloud realm. In other words, the two of you will become one, sharing both glory and disgrace, Muyang said in a low voice. Xiaoyang nodded. He naturally understood the logic behind this. If he were to die one day, then the flowing cloud world would suffer a great loss. It might even become a wasteland in a single day. Similarly, if the flowing cloud realm suffered a great loss, then Xiaoyang's cultivation would drop as well. This was how the two of them became one. Once they succeeded, the two of them would have to protect each other in order to complement each other. Chu Taiyin and Xiao Chongxing were stunned when they heard this. It could be said that they did not know anything about this. However, they knew that this method was extremely crazy. Moreover, they could not afford to make the slightest mistake. Even though it's very risky, I feel like we can give it a try. However, it won't be easy to obtain the Flowing Cloud Realm's acknowledgement. After all, this ancient book is rather damaged and has lost a lot of information. It's almost impossible to complete it, Muyang sighed and said. These ancient books were probably from tens of millions of years ago. If they wanted to understand all of the problems within, there would be no clues that they could use to investigate. Mu Yang's heart was filled with helplessness. Under such circumstances, wanting to change all of this was like a fool's dream. It was something that was almost impossible to accomplish. However, at the very least, it's much safer than using the evil techniques you obtained in the profound fighting world to improve yourself, Muyang said. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Then, Xiao Yang laughed in disappointment. He said, Senior, you're overthinking it. I have indeed seen the evil techniques, but if there really is a shortcut to the Martial King realm, we won't be able to escape unscathed. Hearing this, Mu Yang couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. If that was the case, it was indeed the case. If there really was a shortcut to the Martial King realm within the evil techniques, how could the person from the St. Jade Mountain be stuck at the peak of Kingwu? Mu Yang laughed bitterly. It seemed that he had been overthinking it. However, it was also because of his overthinking that Xiaoyang had found a new path. Under the circumstances of not killing Martial Kings, he could reach the Martial King realm. If that was the case, all the time spent in seclusion and searching for ancient books would be worth it. Senior, I've troubled you during this period of time, Xiaoyang bowed and said solemnly. Because of this, Xiao Yang's admiration for the old man grew even more. It's not a problem. It's all for the Flowing Cloud Realm. Since you have such great ambitions, you can give it a try, Muyang said as he nodded in satisfaction. In fact, from Muyang's point of view, this was a great opportunity for the Flowing Cloud Realm. It was a step towards becoming even richer, and all of this was related to Xiaoyang. Chapter 2001. Perhaps they had never thought of making the drifting cloud world flourish before. Back then, they did not have the confidence and strength to do something like that. However, because of Xiao Yang's appearance, they could think of something like that and have the possibility of accomplishing it. Naturally, they wanted to try it out. After all, the opportunity had arrived. If they did not grasp it in their own hands under these circumstances, they would truly be fools. Moreover, the advancement from a small world to a medium world seemed to be fraught with countless risks. There were far too many unknown possibilities. However, if they succeeded, it would be a monstrous feat that would be recorded in the annals of history forever. This group of people would also become great figures after the advancement to a medium world. In fact, it would not be an exaggeration to describe them as great people. In the past, they cultivated mostly for themselves, their sects or their clans. Now, their strength had already reached the peak by too much. It had even exceeded the expectations of their teachers. Even they themselves did not think that they would be able to reach this step today. As a result, they began to think even more. The things they wanted to do were also different. The future is promising. Chu Taiyin looked at the boundless sky as the smile on her face grew even wider. Xiao Chongxing smiled as well. He knew that his old bones' time of enjoying life was over. Most likely, he would have to work very hard for these things many times. Before we begin, I hope that you can make a few more deductions. Don't be too rash and make any mistakes. You have to be careful with every step, Muyang said in an extremely serious manner. Because many of the details were missing, they could only proceed according to this idea. They constantly explored the mysteries within and could not allow any problems to occur. Even if there were problems, they had to be small ones. If something huge happened, everything would be for naught. Xiao Yang nodded in an extremely serious manner. He naturally understood the reasoning behind this. Right, There's no need to treat me like an outsider in the future. If you need pills, just ask. This is a meridian condensing pill that I personally refined. It's similar to the spirit gathering pill from before. As for when to use it, it's up to each of you. With that, Xiaoyang also took out 3 medicinal pills and gave them to each of the 3 people. Chu Taiyin took the pill and immediately felt like he was in a dream. Previously, he was able to raise his cultivation to rank 9 in the shortest amount of time, which made him extremely grateful. Now he even had the hope of stepping foot into the advanced stage. So, how could he not be excited? Mu Yang took the pill and looked at it worriedly. Of course, you don't have to worry about the side effects of the pill. If your ability is not enough to break through to the next realm, it will be useless even if you take it. After all, this medicinal pill is the icing on the cake, giving you a push from behind to help you cross that hurdle. If you are too far away from that threshold, it will be useless no matter how much you consume, Xiaoyang added. The moment he said that, Mu Yang's expression became much more relaxed, and he became even more fanatical. In other words, this pill is like giving us the aptitude of a top genius, and we won't have any bottlenecks in the future. Mu Yang took a deep breath and said excitedly. Xiaoyang also smiled and nodded his head. That was the logic behind it. Of course, I also suggest that when you encounter a big bottleneck, you should try to break through it on your own. Otherwise, if your cultivation is too smooth, it won't be good for your future. Xiaoyang smiled. When the 3 heard that, they all nodded. They also understood. Sometimes the bottleneck would also help them to comprehend more and even experience some rare things. If everything went smoothly all the way, when he reached the 9th rank and faced another bottleneck, he would probably lack experience. When that time came, they would really be helpless. Mu Yang thought for a moment. He wanted to return the pill to Xiaoyang, but in the end he didn't do so. This was because he already had his own plans and ideas in his heart. Thank you, Lord Xiao. Chu Taiyin smiled. Xiaoyang waved his hand nonchalantly and said, I can refine this thing myself, so if any cultivator in the flowing cloud realm needs it, I will give it to them for free. When he said that, everyone felt very comfortable. However, they soon felt sad. After all, there were too few rank 8 cultivators in the King Wu of the flowing cloud realm. In this period of time, if you don't have anything to do, why don't you stay in North Light City? You have all sensed that the spiritual energy here is very dense. It is very suitable for cultivation. Xiaoyang said. Chu Taiyin nodded and said, This is like the work of the gods. Chu Taiyin and the others had heard some rumors about the heavenly cycle orderly formation. At the same time, they also knew that the formation could only be maintained for 100 years. Therefore, in these 100 years, they had to make the best use of their time to cultivate. I've always heard you say that the spiritual energy in the God realm is dense, like a paradise. Can the current North Light City compare to it? Mu Yang suddenly asked with a smile. Xiaoyang shook his head and said, Let's not talk about how it compares to the God's capital. If we were to talk about any place in the God realm, our North Light City would still be slightly lacking. When he said that, everyone's faces became incomparably shocked. If that was really the case, then how dense would the spiritual energy in the God realm be? This was simply inconceivable. After all, the heavenly cycle orderly formation that Xiaoyang had set up was based on a fake spiritual vein. Compared to the real spiritual veins in the God realm, it was still inferior. This also showed how amazing the heavenly cycle orderly formation was. Although it only covered the area of North Light City, it was able to increase the density of spiritual energy to a similar level. This was enough to show how terrifying its effects were. Looks like we will have to make a trip to the God realm soon and experience what the strongest existence in the 3,000 small worlds is like. Xiao Chongxing smiled and said. Chu Taiyin and Mu Yang nodded in succession. As they spoke, they prepared to go together in the future. Xiaoyang, on the other hand, kept telling them about the situation in the God realm so that they wouldn't break any taboos when they went there. If that happened, Even Xiaoyang wouldn't be able to protect them. Hearing Xiaoyang talk about the God Realm, everyone was shocked. At the same time, they also felt that the rules of the God Realm were too outdated. Chapter 2002. Although the rules of the God Realm were outdated, due to the natural advantages, there were still many experts. This was also something that the Flowing Cloud Realm could not hope to catch up to. It could be said that every realm had its own unique characteristics. This was understandable. After all, how could the 3,000 small realms be exactly the same? The four of them chatted until late at night before the conversation ended. Mu Yang and Xiao Chongqing stayed in North Light City. They felt that now was a good time to break through to a higher realm. Moreover, the Flowing Cloud Realm was peaceful now. There were no external threats, so there was nothing to worry about. As for Chu Taiyin, she still had some matters to deal with in the Taiyin sect, so she returned that night. As for Xiaoyang, he stayed in his courtyard and began to study the ancient books that Mu Yang had left for him. The records on it were indeed very incomplete. Everything was just a few words. However, he managed to obtain a lot of crucial information from these words. Every realm had spiritual energy, but at the same time, every realm had a core. And that core was the origin and vitality of every realm. Those things were called the realm core. Of course, not every realm had a realm core. To gather them together was definitely not an easy task. It could also be gathered by humans, but it required a lot of methods to do so. Furthermore, it was not a simple matter to fuse all of the chi of providence, spirit chi, and so on. Before forming the realm core, one had to turn it into a spirit. And this spirit was not just pure spiritual energy. It was an existence that was similar to a soul. From these ancient books, Xiaoyang obtained an extremely crucial piece of information. That was that the Flowing Cloud Realm already had its own realm core. However, this was still filled with countless questions. How could a realm that could form a realm core be so barren? If it wasn't for the fact that one's luck, spiritual chi, and other factors had all reached a certain peak, it would be impossible to condense a realm core. If such a situation did not occur back then, there would naturally not be such a record. However, this also made people think deeply about another question. What exactly happened to the Flowing Cloud Realm back then to cause it to become so barren? Just how prosperous was the Flowing Cloud world back then? At the very least, in these tens of thousands of years, there was a relatively clear pattern. The Flowing Cloud world had always been weakening, and it could be said that each generation was worse than the last. That was why the invasion of the Demon Realm and the Demon Realm occurred. War after war, causing the situation of the Flowing Cloud Realm to become even worse. Xiaoyang, on the other hand, was a complete anomaly. Therefore, he was able to break such a situation, pacify the chaos of the Demon Realm, and become even more powerful. In addition to the things he brought back from the outside, the Flowing Cloud Realm began to undergo huge changes. However, these were only external objects in the end, and they had a feeling of treating the symptoms, but not the root cause. This was just like putting a lot of potted plants on a piece of barren land. It was naturally pleasing to the eye, but indulging in wine was not the same thing. Many questions kept appearing in Xiaoyang's mind, but he couldn't find an answer for the time being. Because the ancient books were incomplete, it was simply impossible to completely connect the events of that time. There were only a few pieces, and it was difficult to link them together to form a conjecture. Although the information revealed was not much, Xiaoyang was still very satisfied. This was because these ancient books were very helpful to him. If he could obtain the Flowing Cloud Realm's heart of the world, then going against the heavens and breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm would not be impossible. However, Xiaoyang did not try it so easily. He also immediately issued an order to collect all the ancient books in the world. He hoped to obtain more information, so that he would have more confidence. Because most of the people in charge of the sects were in the Northern Light City, this matter was very easy to pass down. The meeting of the vertical and horizontal alliances was not over yet, so Xiaoyang was not in a hurry. He stayed in his small courtyard and continued to cultivate. Of course, he would exit his cultivation state in the evening every day, because at this time Sun Yukai would come over to report some of the details of the alliance. Although he had completely delegated power, Xiaoyang could not be a pure hands-off shopkeeper in the end. Moreover, this was only the beginning, and he needed to spend more energy. 7 days had passed, and many of the details had been completely finalized. At the same time, they elected the Sun Sect, Holy Lord of the Dark Night, the head of the Xiao family, and others to form a decision-making group. In other words, as long as it was not a big deal, these people could make the decision. At that time, the other sects did not need to mobilize a large number of people to come. They only needed to know the result. Of course, if they had different opinions, they could pass it on to the Northern Light City immediately. As for the allocation of the quota, it was completely settled. After Xiaoyang heard these reports, he also smiled and nodded. Immediately, Xiaoyang took out 2 rings and said, "These are my gains in the profound fighting world. One is our Northern Light cities, and the other is the entire flowing cloud realms. You can distribute it." Xiaoyang said. Sun Yukai took the 2 rings, but did not check them immediately. He also knew that it was probably all of the city lord's belongings. Moreover, there were indeed many valuable items in it. "City Lord, I was thinking whether we should find a place to develop a secondary city. Now that the Northern Light City has the universal circulation formation and has become the core of the upper realm, it has extraordinary significance. If all the disciples are gathered here, and the reception task is also like this, it may cause a very big burden here." Sun Yukai took a deep breath and spoke his thoughts. Xiaoyang raised his eyebrows slightly. He naturally understood Sun Yotsai's meaning. Due to the uniqueness of the Northern Light City, there might be many people pretending to come here to entrust missions in the future in order to cultivate here. At that time, the Northern Light City would probably face a situation of overcrowding. If that was really the case, it would be easy to cause chaos when there were more people. At that time, there might be more situations. Thinking of this, Xiaoyang also nodded slightly and said, "I think you already have a plan in your heart." Sun Yukai smiled and said, "I have indeed thought about it." Chapter 2003. When Xiaoyang heard this, he also smiled. Sun Yotsai's way of doing things was really comforting. After having such an idea, he had already started to plan. Therefore, when he agreed, he didn't have to continue to waste time thinking about it. "Tell me about it," Xiaoyang said with a smile. Sun Yukai thought for a while and said, "In the past, I bought a piece of land 1,000 miles away from Borealis City. It's very suitable there, and it's not far from the main city. Although it's a bit barren, it's still good to develop. But there's another problem, that is, the other half of the land is owned by the Sun-Moon sect." It could be said that, from the beginning, Sun Yukai had already thought about it. With Borealis City as the center, he would let their forces continue to expand. Therefore, as long as there was a chance to buy the surrounding land, he would never be soft-hearted, and even spent a lot of money. However, Borealis City was rich and overbearing, so they didn't care about these expenses. Moreover, under Sun Yotsai's instructions, many places had already started to be renovated, but the progress was not very fast. This is not a problem. You can send 2 saint-level magic tools to the Sun-Moon sect. They will give face. Xiaoyang smiled indifferently and said. Sun Yukai nodded and agreed. He also knew that Chu Tain could reach the current realm because of the opportunity given by their city lord. So, in front of a huge favor, what was the point of giving up a piece of land? Although because of the changes in Borealis City, the surrounding land had also undergone a qualitative change in the hearts of many people. However, as long as Borealis City didn't extend its hand for a day, they still wouldn't act rashly. When most of the people are sent to the deputy city, I hope that the city lord can personally come and appease their emotions. Sun Yukai said solemnly, "No problem." Xiaoyang said, "The current Borealis City could be said to be in existence like a holy land for cultivation. If the disciples were to move out, they would inevitably be dissatisfied and feel that they were banished to the border. Then I'll take my leave. After Sun Yukai finished speaking, he walked outside. Seeing that Sun Yotsai's back had bent a little, Xiaoyang frowned slightly. It could be said that in these days, Sun Yukai had handled this complicated matter beautifully with his own strength. Naturally, he had spent a lot of energy on it. At the same time, he also had to think about the development of Borealis City, which was even more exhausting. However, Sun Dishing was still in closed-door cultivation, so he had no choice but to shoulder all these matters by himself. Although old Master Xiao and Qin Mingho were helping out, they weren't familiar with the situation and could only deal with the less important matters. Of course, Sun Yukai also began to intentionally support some of the new generation of disciples. How could it be possible for a group of old bones like them to completely control such a large North Light city? If it was in the past, it would indeed be possible. But now that the city lord had become the ruler of the flowing cloud realm, the North Light City would only grow stronger under such a halo. Therefore, more people were needed to manage these problems. Old Master Xiao visited the Sun Moon sect with heavy gifts. In the end, the other party also readily agreed and sold the Tianfeng city under their rule to Borealis City. Everything could be said to be very stable. Tianfeng City was demolished and rebuilt. More than half of the disciples of Borealis City were mobilized and were working hard to build a new city. Sun Yukai also immediately issued many regulations and informed all the disciples that moving to the secondary city was already the general trend. Although many people were very dissatisfied after knowing some of the compensation and subsequent appeasement, they slowly calmed down and weren't as agitated as before. In this half a month, Xiaoyang focused on studying ancient books and didn't pay attention to the outside world. Many things were taken care of by Sun Yukai, so he didn't need to worry. The number of times Sun Yukai came to report had also decreased because he was now running between the main city and the secondary city. It could be said that he was extremely busy. During this period of time, there wasn't anything particularly important. Even if he didn't report it one by one, it was fine. Sun Yukai also sincerely admired the breadth of mind of the current ruler. The so-called "don't doubt the people you use" was probably just like this. Moreover, he was incomparably assured of his own subordinates. Sun Yukai also felt that it was his fortune to be loyal to such a person. Otherwise, even if he had more talent, so what? In the end, it was just a place where he couldn't be used. However, Xiaoyang was different. He was given a big enough stage to show off, and the stage was still constantly expanding. As the news of Borealis City, starting to build a secondary city, spread out, the entire flowing cloud realm began to shake. When everyone learned that many things in Borealis City would also be moved to the secondary city, they were almost in despair. Originally, they still thought that when they went to entrust missions, they could stay in Borealis City to cultivate. But in this way, they would have no reason to enter Borealis City. Such a bold and decisive reform could be said to be full of complaints. However, for the sake of the peace and management in the future, they had to cut the Gordian knot. Because all of this was just the beginning. If they really let everyone stay here for a long time and get used to it, the difficulty would probably increase exponentially. Another half a month passed, and Xiaoyang also quietly went to the secondary city to take a look. The layout was not much different from the main city. It could be said to be a work of the gods, and the progress was also very terrifying. Most likely, in less than a month, the secondary city would be completely completed. The secondary city was supervised by Chen Mingho, and there was a formation set up inside to condense the spiritual energy. After Xiaoyang saw it that time, he didn't ask about it again and focused on studying the ancient books. Countless sects would send some ancient books every day, but there were almost none that were related to the world core. On this day, Xiaoyang suddenly had an idea. His soul left his body and directly poured into this land. His soul entered the land and continued to dive deeper. He found that he was as comfortable as if he was in a sea of clouds. At the same time, he also felt that there was an extremely pure energy not far away, and it was very gentle. There were also many veins around his body. These veins were like rivers that intertwined with each other, and also like the texture on a tree leaf. They constantly emitted spiritual energy, nourishing the huge flowing cloud realm. Xiao Yang continued forward and soon saw an incomparably pure white cloud. Chapter 2004. This cloud was very gentle and beautiful, just like a virgin. It was tranquil and peaceful, causing people to unconsciously fall into this wonderful feeling. Even Xiao Yang's mind became very peaceful at this moment. It was as if his soul had been purified, and he felt calm without any ripples. It was as if all the troubles in the mortal world had been put down at this moment, and there was no sadness or joy. This state was very wonderful. It was so peaceful that it was like an ancient well without ripples, making people feel nostalgic and intoxicated. Is this the heart of the realm? Xiao Yang murmured to himself. After an unknown period of time, Xiao Yang came back to his senses, and he was very surprised. He didn't know how long he had been in this state of selflessness. Although this feeling was very wonderful, he didn't want to continue like this. Then, Xiao Yang didn't do anything. According to the ancient books, he had to calm his mind to sense it. If he could get a response from the heart of the realm, he would be able to form a contract, and the two would become one. As such, Xiao Yang immediately calmed down and began to sense it with his mind. This was something that required a lot of patience, because no matter how much effort you put in, it would be normal if the other party didn't respond. The heart of the realm wanted to connect its fate with a cultivator, which was a huge gamble. If something went wrong, because people were flexible, the one who would be hurt in the end would be the world. Therefore, not many people knew about the heart of the realm. For the same reason, those who could be recognized were even rarer than those who were in the martial emperor realm in the 3,000 small worlds. Xiao Yang wasn't in a rush. He slowly sensed it, hoping to get a response. However, reality was often cruel. He could only watch and couldn't do anything. Xiao Yang's first attempt also ended in failure. At the same time, he also retreated. After all, this kind of thing couldn't be forced. He could only leave it to fate. Whether it succeeded or not, it couldn't be forced. However, if you don't try, you won't have a chance. Even if he knew that he would fail, he still needed to work hard and not give up right from the start. Xiao Yang would spend 4 hours every day trying to sense the world core. He would spend the rest of his time cultivating or listening to Sun Yukai talk about mundane matters. Although Sun Yukai was the one who made most of the decisions, Xiao Yang only knew about it. However, he was still listening. His heart was facing the development of the entire world, so that he could be aware of it and not ignorant of it. If it was in the past, Xiao Yang indeed did not need to know these things. However, now that he had taken on the title of co-ruler of the flowing cloud world, coupled with the fact that he wanted the recognition of the world core to become a true co-ruler, he had to put in even more effort. If he didn't understand this world, then what else was there to talk about? The construction of the secondary city could be said to be extremely fast. Currently, it had already begun to take shape. Many disciples and elders had already moved over. The northern Lake City was not as prosperous as it used to be, and it had become much more desolate. However, as Sun Yukai carried out his plans in the future, many elders and disciples from other sects would come here. In the end, this place would only become a holy land for cultivation. As for mundane matters, it would gradually become separated. Gradually, Xiao Yang felt more and more about the world core. That white cloud was like a weak woman, and it was extremely quiet. Moreover, it made people's hearts ache as if she had been greatly hurt, which was why she was like ice and could not accept others. Even Xiao Yang seemed to have been affected to a certain extent. His state of mind became much more sorrowful. Therefore, in the past few days, even his mood had become much more downcast because of this. Once, when Sun Yukai was reporting the situation, he discovered this as well. In the end, he could only sigh and leave without saying anything. Because of Xiao Yang, the flowing cloud world started to change. With Sun Yukai borrowing Xiao Yang's power to take the lead, he began to mobilize the entire flowing cloud world to change. Moreover, this method could be said to be done in all aspects, and it was fair. As long as you had some ability and talent, then you could enter the Northern Light City to cultivate. It was just that the time limit was different. After all, if everyone always stayed in the Northern Light City to cultivate, then it would be overcrowded in the end. At that time, there would be a lot of trouble. Because Sun Yukai spent most of his time in the secondary city and Xiaoyang in the main city was focused on cultivation, he rarely dealt with these matters. Therefore, this burden fell on Chun Mingho's shoulders. Some disciples from the Taiying sect and Taiyang sect, who had been stuck at bottlenecks for a long time, also broke through in the Northern Light City, and their strength increased greatly. In a short period of time, the overall strength of the flowing cloud world also began to increase, and it was still continuous. Although this process would take a long time, it could still improve a lot in a few decades. As for when these disciples' strength could increase to be comparable to the God realm or the other two realms, there was still a long way to go. Regarding this, Xiaoyang was also very clear in his heart, and he did not force it. As long as they continued to improve and show prosperity, that was enough. As for other things, why should he worry so much? On this day, Sun Yukai walked over solemnly and said, "City Lord, the construction of the secondary city has been completed. Please give it a name." Hearing this, Xiaoyang said, "Have you thought about what to call it?" "At first, I thought that just calling it secondary city would be good, but I keep feeling that it's a little inferior." Sun Yukai laughed bitterly and said, "Of course." Sun Yukai had already thought of a few names in his heart, but he was not the city lord after all, so he still had to ask for Xiaoyang's opinion. Xiaoyang frowned slightly. Last time, the name of the Northern Light City was decided by the few of them by drawing straws. "What did great-grandfather and the others say?" Xiaoyang said. Sun Yukai said, "All the elders have no objections, City Lord. Please make the decision." Hearing this, Xiaoyang's heart was in a bit of a dilemma. This wasn't an easy thing to do. "Let's call it Baixing City." Xiaoyang pondered for a long time, then slowly opened his mouth and said. Hearing this, Sun Yukai gave a thumbs up and sighed. "Good name. There are many things waiting to be done. This is just like the situation of our flowing cloud world now. Wonderful." Xiaoyang turned a deaf ear to Sun Yotsai's flattery. Chapter 2005. After Sun Yukai finished reporting the situation, he left. He also told Xiaoyang that after 3 days, Baixing City would be officially opened. At that time, he would need to go and give a speech. However, Xiaoyang also refused, but said that he would show up and preach in Baixing City for a few days. Although these things were more troublesome, Xiaoyang, as the backbone, still needed to show up. Otherwise, once the distance between him and the disciples of North Light City was too far, no matter how one looked at it, it was very unwise. After sorting out these things, Xiaoyang once again went back to cultivation. The establishment of Baixing City could be said to be of great significance to North Light City, and even to the entire Drifting Cloud realm. It was also extraordinary. Therefore, it was destined to attract too much attention. During this period of time, the establishment of Baixing City could be said to be very fast. At the same time, the overall strength of the Drifting Cloud realm increased, which could not be underestimated. Countless cultivators had stepped into King Wu level 5, which could be said to have reached a level that many people could only dream of. Also, because of the appearance of the Universal Order formation, countless people also felt that King Wu level 5 was not their end, but just the beginning. Even Arctic Grey Feather and Qian Guangqi also had their own improvements. Among them, Qian Guangqi was the most outstanding. He had already reached King Wu level 7. It could be said that except for a monster like Xiaoyang, among his peers he could be regarded as an existence that left others in the dust. The general trend of the Drifting Cloud realm began to change because of this, and countless people began to look forward to it. They felt that under the leadership of Xiaoyang, the leader of the drifting cloud realm, they could be said to be full of confidence. Among them, there was no lack of geniuses who were constantly beginning to emerge like bamboo shoots after the rain. However, those people were just the beginning. Compared with this group of top cultivators, they were still dim. 3 days could be said to have passed in the blink of an eye. Xiao Yang's appearance at the opening of Baixing City immediately attracted countless cheers. Many people even went crazy. When they learned that the princess would preach in the next few days, the disciples of North Light City were suddenly very excited. However, after those who came to watch the ceremony heard the news, they felt very uncomfortable in their hearts, because they were not disciples of North Light City. Naturally, they did not receive such treatment. It could be said that because of the appearance of Xiaoyang and the return of several old ancestors, the top forces were still in the limelight. Instead, those forces without a powerhouse overseeing, now they felt a little stretched and even felt that it was particularly difficult. After the opening ceremony, Xiaoyang went straight to the martial arts lecture hall and began to preach. As for those secular matters of the world, he had full authority of the drifting cloud realm. In Baixing was the drifting cloud realm. In the drifting cloud realm, as the leader of the drifting cloud realm, in the drifting was, it could be said, it could be said could be the worlds, the be sent it. Among them, there were also many rogue cultivators who came because of the fame, and they did the same. Regarding this, Sun Yukai also received Xiao Yang's instructions to return the gifts more heavily, because after receiving the compensation from Tianhe Realm and Mysterious Dou Realm, the current Xiaoyang could be said to be rich and imposing. Therefore, Sun Yukai did not have any objections and did as he was told. Of course, the two of them also had a tacit understanding that this method was also to increase the overall strength of the drifting cloud realm. As for whether the others could discover such painstaking efforts, it was their business. As long as the drifting cloud realm could benefit from this, it was enough. Why should they think more? It seems that Xiaoyang has spent a lot of money this time. At least the things he obtained in Mysterious Dou Realm have been completely given away in these 2 incidents. Mu Yang smiled bitterly and said, now, in Mu Yang's eyes, Xiaoyang was completely a rich man. Moreover, he was a very generous rich man. Chu Taiyin smiled faintly and said, this kind of thing is normal. Now, it seems that the drifting cloud realm has a Xiaoyang. It is a great blessing. Mu Yang also smiled and nodded. The 2 of them were well aware of this. Xiao Yang's actions were for the drifting cloud realm so that every sect could benefit and increase their strength. Such boldness really makes us seniors blush with shame. Mu Yang smiled bitterly and said, back then, when did Mu Yang not think of forming alliances? Although he had done many things for the drifting cloud realm, in the end, he was unable to get rid of the demon realm. His reputation was not enough to command the world. Moreover, even if he had done that, Mu Yang did not feel that he could be so generous as to take out all these treasures and split them equally with the entire drifting cloud realm. Chu Taiyin also frowned slightly because half of the land in Baixing City belonged to their Sun Moon sect. At that time, Chun Mingho had brought 2 saint-level weapons and many other treasures. Naturally, he could not refuse. However, looking at it now, Chu Taiyin felt that he was being too calculative. However, this also strengthened Chu Taiyin's opinion. As long as he followed Xiaoyang, there would be countless benefits. This leader was truly unparalleled. Everything he did was for the development of the drifting cloud realm. He did not even hide anything. North Light City is truly filled with talents. I am envious. Chu Taiyin sighed and said. Mu Yang nodded with a smile. He had naturally noticed this as well. Moreover, such a large force could be said to have a clear division of labor. As the city lord, Xiaoyang did not even need to care about anything and could still prosper. This was the most terrifying existence. If it was before, perhaps Mu Yang would not be convinced. However, now he was completely convinced. He had stayed in North Light City for a long time, so he had some understanding of it. In particular, he knew that when North Light City was first established, it was incomparably weak. There were only a few people. Now it was extremely prosperous and was one of the most outstanding people in the drifting cloud realm. That is also because Xiaoyang has a good eye. Mu Yang smiled and said. Chu Taiyin also smiled and nodded. Everyone knew that, in terms of cultivation, the two from the Sun family could only be considered average. However, when Xiaoyang was not here, the two of them were the ones who made the decisions. Although the cultivation and strength of these two people were not high, in terms of governance, they were unique. Seniors, why are you two standing here? Please go down and drink. At this moment, Chen Minghe walked over and smiled. Mu Yang and Chu Taiyin looked at each other and laughed. As the saying goes, the one who is strong is the teacher. Since we are in the same realm, why are we so restricted? Chapter 2006. In the Northern Light City, guests were received. For a time, it could be said that there was joyous singing and dancing, and it was a peaceful atmosphere. Many people had a lot of feelings towards this place. Many people rejoiced that they were able to obtain such a great opportunity. At the same time, there were some people who felt that they didn't have the opportunity or that they had chosen the wrong direction. If they had joined the Northern Light City back then, would they be stronger than they were now? Everyone had their own thoughts, but in the end, it was all in the past and had become a foregone conclusion. In the end, thousands of words could only fall into the wine cup and be drunk in one gulp. It was as if it had never appeared, making people feel helpless. As for these prosperous places, Xiaoyang didn't take a look at them. Instead, he preached in the martial arts lecture hall. Moreover, he also let Lin Shiyun spread the news that as long as they were willing to listen, they could go and listen. As for how much they could gain, it would depend on how many opportunities they had. After this news spread out, countless people were grateful to him. For a time, the martial arts lecture hall could be said to be packed with people. Countless people sat there to listen. However, during this period, there were also some people who didn't understand. They felt that their cultivation was too low, so they had no choice but to leave and make room for others. On the second day of the lecture, there were also some disciples who began to leave one after another. They didn't leave because they were impatient, but because they had comprehended something. It was time for them to break through, so they left. Among them, it wasn't only the disciples of the Northern Light City. For example, the Sun Sect, and the Dark Night Sacred Land also had some gains. As the saying goes, stones from other mountains can be used to polish jade. As for this Tao teaching, it could be said that he did not sleep or rest. For cultivators, not sleeping or resting was nothing. There were even some people who were fascinated by the lecture and forgot about time. They were intoxicated by Xiaoyang's lecture and were very satisfied. For a time, Xiaoyang could be said to have reached the heart of the people. Previously, countless people worshipped Xiaoyang only because he had quelled the chaos of the devil realm for the flowing cloud world and then quelled the invasion of the profound Do world. Now, they had even received tangible benefits. It could be said that they were truly sincere about it. Xiaoyang felt a lot better under the influence of the crowd. However, he didn't realize it and continued to talk. This time, the preaching lasted for a total of 7 days and 7 nights. During this period of time, no less than 1,000 people obtained the opportunity to break through. Among them, there were also countless experts from King Wu. Even some of the sect leaders were mesmerized by the story. Perhaps it was because of revisiting the old and learning the new. Xiaoyang was able to sense the journey he had taken along the way, giving him a strange feeling. It was as if he was about to make a breakthrough. Immediately, he was overjoyed. After the lecture, Xiaoyang immediately returned to his small courtyard. He consumed the meridian's solidifying pill that he had refined and began to break through the 5th spiritual pulse. Now that the fate of the 3,000 small worlds had been completely occupied, the possibility of breaking through to the martial emperor realm was 1 in 10,000, so there was no need to try. Therefore, the only explanation was that he could condense the fifth spiritual pulse. If he succeeded, then Xiaoyang could be said to be invincible in the Qingwu realm. Even if he were to face the four great divine generals of the realm of the gods, even if they were to swarm him, he felt that he could fight them. Xiaoyang already had an idea of how many spiritual pulses he would need to condense at the 9th rank. In fact, in his opinion, this was only a matter of time. Of course, now that an opportunity had appeared, it would be unkind of him to not grasp it firmly in his hands. After 7 days of seclusion, Xiaoyang successfully condensed the fifth spiritual pulse. For a moment, it could be said that it was a natural phenomenon. Auspicious clouds gathered in the sky. All kinds of strange beasts and birds circled around the northern light city. At this moment, the bald man had just broken through to the 9th rank of Qingwu. When he saw the strange phenomenon in the sky, he was instantly shocked. He touched his bald head and muttered, "Could it be that I'm really a 1 in a million genius? That I received special care from the heavens and broke through to the 9th rank? That's why such a strange phenomenon occurred." The bald man's heart was filled with doubts. He touched his head and didn't dare to confirm it. However, such a situation also caused him to be extremely shocked and astonished. The bald man quickly felt that something was wrong. An incomparably tyrannical aura soared into the sky. It was magnificent. Looking in that direction, the bald man's mouth couldn't help but twitch a few times. He muttered, "Boss, could it be that you're really a monster? How can this happen?" The bald man was now doubting his life. When he first met Xiaoyang, although he couldn't defeat him, he was still a level higher. Therefore, he felt that he wasn't bad. However, ever since Xiaoyang returned from the realm of the gods, it could be said that everything had changed. Now that he had just stepped into the 9th rank, his boss actually broke through again. This was a little too terrifying. Such a speed was even more shocking. It was very helpless. It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. It could be said that Xiaoyang's breakthrough this time and the condensation of the fifth spiritual meridian swept through the entire drifting cloud world. As long as it was a 9th rank expert in King Wu's 9th rank, they could feel this terrifying aura. Everyone was shocked. They couldn't imagine what kind of monster Xiaoyang was. As for Xiaoyang, who was directly involved, he slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. However, he didn't feel too much about it. Everything seemed to be very normal. There weren't any ripples. However, Xiaoyang was very satisfied that he was able to condense the fifth spiritual meridian so quickly. He originally thought that he would need a few more months of nurturing before he could do it. He didn't expect that this kind of teaching would have the effect of revisiting the old and learning the new. This could be said to be an unexpected surprise. At the same time, this caused Xiaoyang to ponder deeply. Sometimes it was a good thing to learn too much. However, there were also times when it was necessary to reflect on it. After all, one couldn't say when it would become a matter of swallowing dates. It could be said that the inheritance of the Purifier Soken was something that Xiaoyang hadn't completely digested. On the contrary, this time's teaching had revealed the profound meaning of the inheritance. Furthermore, he had comprehended the charm of it. It was only natural that he would be able to make progress. It was also because the martial emperor's fate was occupied in the 3,000 small worlds. Otherwise, there would be hope for him to make a breakthrough. Chapter 2007. After forming the fifth spirit vein, Xiaoyang's perception of the drifting cloud realm changed slightly. However, he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was different about it. Such a wonderful feeling made him extremely puzzled. What exactly was going on? After struggling for a long time, Xiaoyang calmed himself down and continued to communicate with the heart of the realm. As the person involved, Xiaoyang calmed down again. However, the drifting cloud realm was in an uproar because of this. Many people were very shocked. This unforeseen event could be said to have made them incomparably shocked. Because of Xiao Yang's teachings, many people had already understood what the Ninth Order Martial King realm was like and what the right path to take was. Therefore, he naturally understood the concept of spiritual veins. Ordinary cultivators had 5 spirit veins. Among them, the top geniuses could form a 4th spirit vein. Now, Xiaoyang had 5 spirit veins. How heaven-defying was his talent! Therefore, how could they not be shocked? They even found it hard to believe. However, this news came from the Sun Moon sect. It came from First Sun Moon. How could they not believe it? To the drifting cloud realm, this was definitely good news. Because the stronger Xiaoyang was, the higher the status of the drifting cloud realm would be. When that time comes, they wouldn't have to worry when they go out. Even if they were wronged, there would be people who would stand up for them. For a realm to become strong, it was necessary for it to become strong as a whole. However, if the ceiling was high enough, it would be enough to intimidate many people. In the end, Mu Yang couldn't sit still anymore. He left the Sun Moon sect and went to North Light City. He wanted to ask what was going on. It could be said that Mu Yang had traveled the world for thousands of years. In addition, he had been to the Dark Do world and seen many things. Therefore, he naturally had some understanding of this. He felt that Xiao Yang's actions were a bit risky. Xiao Yang didn't care about the turbulent situation outside. He was focused on comprehending the heart of the realm. It could be said that breaking through to the Martial Emperor realm was the most urgent thing for him. In this regard, he felt that he could not slack or be careless in the slightest. After condensing the 5th spirit vein, Xiaoyang received some responses. However, the response was very weak and the realm core was no longer as cold as before. Instead, it was treating him with a very normal attitude. Although the progress wasn't much, Xiaoyang felt that it was a pretty good harvest to be able to change the attitude of the realm core towards him. Moreover, everything was developing in a positive direction. That was enough. Next, he would have enough time to prove that he was worthy of being bet on. Because of this change in the world core, Xiaoyang understood that if he wasn't powerful enough to protect the flowing cloud world, the world core definitely wouldn't care about him. Although it could be said that Xiaoyang was invincible in the realm of King Wu. However, it was still difficult to obtain the approval of the heart of the realm. Of course, for the heart of the realm, the first thing it needed to do to form a contract with a cultivator was to look at their strength. Secondly, it needed to look at the person's character. If the chosen cultivator only wanted to take something to reach a higher realm and leave after eating it, it would be a huge blow to the entire world. After making some progress, Xiaoyang didn't continue to force things and left. When Xiao Yang's soul returned to his body, he sensed Mu Yang's arrival and immediately walked out. "Senior, why have you come this time?" Xiao Yang asked with a smile. Mu Yang's expression was serious as he said, "Didn't you say that the more spirit veins you condense, the more difficult it will be to break through to the Martial King realm?" Xiao Yang nodded. That was indeed the case. That's for ordinary people, but for me, so what if I have 6 spirit veins? Xiao Yang said with a smile when he saw the confusion on Mu Yang's face. Hearing this, Mu Yang couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. This was twice the number of spirit veins for ordinary people. Wasn't this a bit too risky? Or could it be that his innate talent had already reached such a terrifying level? Suddenly Mu Yang laughed. Xiao Yang was much stronger than him, especially on the path of cultivation. Xiao Yang had only reached his current realm because of his guidance. But now, he was using the fake age of an elder to persuade him. That was really inappropriate. He was just worrying for nothing. How is that matter going? Mu Yang asked worriedly. Since the fate of the 3,000 small worlds had been completely taken, they could only hope to find another way. If they could succeed, they would be able to achieve great things. If they failed, with Xiao Yang's personality, he wouldn't give up. So what if it was only the flowing cloud realm? He was also confident that he could bring the flowing cloud realm to the middle world. Of course, if they reached the middle world earlier, there would be more experts in the flowing cloud realm. If it was before, Mu Yang wouldn't have dared to think about it. But now he also wanted to experience the glory of the martial emperor realm and look at it from a higher place. Xiao Yang smiled and said, "I've made some progress recently. Although it's very slow, I have enough patience." Mu Yang smiled. He felt that since he could sense it, there was definitely hope. Over the past few days, when he had nothing to do, Mu Yang would try to sense the heart of the world according to the ancient records. However, every time he tried, he would fail. This made him feel quite helpless and hopeless. It was already so difficult to sense the heart of the world, and to be acknowledged was simply wishful thinking. Since Xiao Yang had made some progress, there was at least hope for the next step. "If you need any help, just tell me," Mu Yang said. However, at that moment, Xiao Yang's expression became quite serious. He frowned, and his expression became quite unsightly. Seeing this, Mu Yang couldn't help but be given a fright. He hadn't said anything too extreme, so why was Xiao Yang acting like this? Mu Yang couldn't understand, but he soon sensed the change in Xiao Yang's aura. It was guarded and filled with battle intent. Evidently, someone had invaded the flowing cloud realm, which was why he was acting like this. Chapter 2008. Seeing the drastic change in Xiao Yang's emotions, Mu Yang knew that something was wrong. Could it be that something had happened again? Everything had finally returned to normal, and the flowing cloud realm was steadily improving. If something else happened, it wouldn't be a good thing. The reason why Xiao Yang's expression was so serious was because he didn't know whether the newcomer was a friend or foe. Or perhaps it was just a passerby. "What's wrong?" Mu Yang asked fearfully. If even King Wu, who claimed to be invincible in his realm, was afraid, then just how powerful and terrifying was the opponent? This was really hard to imagine, so Mu Yang wasn't sure what was going on. He really didn't know what was going on. And what exactly could he do to reverse this situation? Xiao Yang took in a deep breath and said with a heavy voice, "I can sense an aura that's even more powerful than mine. Although I don't sense any ill intent right now, it's still a danger to the flowing cloud world." Hearing that, Mu Yang's expression became extremely unsettled. If the aura was even stronger than Xiao Yang's, could it be an old monster with 6 spirit veins? Who knows? It might even be someone in that realm. However, on second thought, there were very few cultivators in that realm. Even in the 3,000 small worlds, it was hard to find them. So how could they appear in the flowing cloud realm? As such, from Mu Yang's point of view, it could be a peak cultivator who didn't have the fortune to break through, but condensed a lot of spirit veins. That was why they were so powerful. That was an old monster and not easy to deal with. Outside the flowing cloud realm, an old man calmly stepped out and directly entered the flowing cloud realm. The old man's expression was solemn, and no one could sense any emotion from him. It was as if there was only the flow of time in his eyes. Everything was as natural as the river flowing east, and as emotionless as the great Tao. The old man looked down at the layers built on the clouds, and a faint smile appeared on his face. "The flowing cloud world is truly interesting," the old man said indifferently. His aura was still very calm, and there was no change at all. Soon, the old man raised his eyebrows slightly because he sensed the strongest person in the world. At the same time, the smile on his face grew even wider. "Good lad, you can actually build a pseudo-spiritual vein. This effect is not far off from a real spiritual vein, as expected of someone who is valued by the God realm, someone who made an exception and proposed an alliance." The old man murmured. His gaze and aura began to undergo some subtle changes at this moment. Gradually, a trace of viciousness and killing intent unconsciously flowed out. It was extremely terrifying. The old man yawned and looked at the place where the array was supporting him. If this pseudo-spirit vein is destroyed, this kid's painstaking efforts will go to waste. When that time comes, what will he do? The old man thought in his heart, and his hands gradually began to move. As the old man's aura flowed out, everyone in the flowing cloud world who had stepped into the 9th rank immediately sensed this terrifying existence. Immediately, everyone was in danger. This was because what they felt was an incomparably huge pressure. They even felt a little breathless. This was an absolute pressure, so they felt extremely uncomfortable in their hearts. As the aura continued to be released, more and more cultivators sensed this aura. Immediately, many people started to panic. No one knew why such an expert would appear all of a sudden. However, the chill that came from their lives told them that if they were to act rashly, they might not be able to keep their lives. Everyone felt extremely uncomfortable in their hearts. Some people whose cultivation base was not stable even crawled on the ground and trembled. Chu Tain walked out. He looked at the sky unwillingly and felt extremely uncomfortable. Although Chu Tain was not suppressed to the point that he could not move, the fear in his heart could not be stopped no matter what. However, until now, Xiaoyang still had not appeared. What was going on? Could it be that this person was even stronger than Xiaoyang? At this moment, Xiaoyang was indeed not in a hurry to make a move. At the same time, he was still observing the situation. As the situation changed, he frowned. He could already confirm that this person was not a friend, nor was he a passerby. He was an enemy. After all, he was using his aura to suppress the entire flowing cloud world. This person could be said to be extremely arrogant. Naturally, he did not have the slightest bit of goodwill. Mu Yang laughed helplessly. As his cultivation base rose, he could already feel how terrifying his opponent was. Even though they had not clashed head-on, he could sense too many things from the other party's aura. This person's cultivation is truly terrifying. He can actually target the entire flowing cloud world. As Mu Yang spoke, his voice became much lower. Xiaoyang nodded solemnly. As the person with the highest cultivation base in the flowing cloud world, he could naturally sense it clearly. At the same time, he began to quickly calculate in his heart. Why had this person come? Looks like we have a tough battle ahead of us. How should we fight? Mu Yang asked in a low voice. Although Mu Yang did not know what kind of powerhouse Xiaoyang had offended outside, since this person had come to cause trouble in the flowing cloud world, they naturally could not just stand by and watch. If they fought one-on-one, they might not even be able to make it out alive. If they worked together, they might just barely be able to put in some effort and have a chance of victory. Xiaoyang shook his head helplessly. Right now, even I do not know how strong the opponent is. Hearing this, Mu Yang could only let out a helpless, bitter laugh. Even Xiaoyang did not know. Could it be that the high and mighty old man was really at that level? For a moment, Xiao Chongxing and First Lunar also moved towards North Light City at the first possible moment. In the face of such a major event, they naturally wanted to protect Xiaoyang. If something really happened to Xiaoyang, putting everything else aside, the flowing cloud world would also be affected by it. Xiaoyang, so what if you call all the 9th level cultivators? One ant or a few ants, it doesn't mean much. Instead, it is your way of treating your guests that is not good, the old man slowly said. Chapter 2009. The moment he said those words, it was obvious that he wanted Xiaoyang to have nowhere to hide and nowhere to hide. The elder's thoughts were quite meticulous. He knew that Xiaoyang was definitely afraid of him, which was why he had stayed in North Light City and did not dare to move. Since the Northern Light City had a pseudo-spiritual vein and was supported by a formation that doubled its effectiveness, there might be other formations as well. If they were to forcefully attack it, they might suffer some losses. Moreover, these geniuses had always been prideful. Sometimes he only needed to use a few words to agitate him, and it would be difficult for him to control his temperament and directly charge out. That was a very normal thing. As such, it was quite advantageous for him to stay outside. If he was in someone else's territory, he might have some strange methods. Moreover, if he had not fought in a place that he had been in for a long time, how could he have escaped from the encirclement of 2 higher beings? Regarding this, the old man had already calculated all of this. Moreover, he was not in a hurry to make a move, and he only watched silently to see how Xiaoyang would react. When the time came, he would just have to do what he wanted. Why would he make things so complicated? After hearing this, Xiaoyang could not help but smile. Since things had come to this, there was naturally no reason for him to retreat. If it was anywhere else, Xiaoyang would naturally run away without saying anything. After all, for someone to make him feel so wary, that person's strength was terrifying. As such, no matter how he looked at it, his chances of victory were too small, and there was no need to fight. However, there was nothing he could do. Behind him was the flowing cloud world. If this guest attacked the flowing cloud world, this place would fall into a hopeless situation and be heavily damaged. As such, he could not retreat. Even if he could not fight and did not see any chance of victory, he still had to give it his all. Only then would he have a chance. At that moment, Mu Yang's expression became quite unsightly. He also knew how serious the current situation was. He had never thought of running away from this place, not to mention the kindness Xiaoyang had shown him before, just based on his original intention. If he wanted the flowing cloud world to become stronger, he would definitely need to rely on Xiaoyang. Only if he lived could he bring the flowing cloud world to greater heights. Following this, Xiaoyang shot into the sky. Since he could not avoid it, he could only face it head-on. As for what kind of ending it would be, no one could say for sure. However, the only thing that Xiaoyang could control was to let himself go and fight. Only then would he be able to grasp that slim chance of survival. Of course, he had to do this because he was wary of the other party attacking the flowing cloud world. Very soon, the two of them met face to face. They sized each other up, but their expressions were very different. Right now, Xiaoyang could be said to be extremely nervous. His entire body was filled with battle intent, and he did not dare to be careless in the slightest. This was because he was also worried that if a problem were to occur, then he would truly be consigned to eternal damnation. Furthermore, he would not be the only one. Who knows, maybe the flowing cloud world behind him would suffer because of this. As for the old man in front of him, Xiaoyang suspected that it was the mysterious Dou world. Could it be that the mysterious Dou world was unwilling to accept this? So they spent a large amount of money to invite this expert to take revenge? If that was the case, the flowing cloud world would have to pay a huge price. The affairs of the world were ever-changing, and this was how it was. The expression in the old man's eyes when he looked at Xiaoyang had also changed a little. His eyebrows slightly furrowed, but soon after he began to clap his hands as the smile on his face became a little thicker. I did not expect your cultivation to rise so quickly. Back then, you were only at the 8th level of Kingwu. Now, you have already condensed 5 spiritual veins. Not bad, the old man said with a smile. Although the old man said it with a smile, Xiaoyang and Muyang were not happy at all. That was because the old man's tone was not sincere. Instead, it was strange. At that moment, Xiaoyang was stunned. The old man knew him so well. He was confused. Who was this old man? Back then, Kingwu was at the 8th level. That was before he entered the divine tomb. At that time, Xiaoyang really couldn't recall that he had seen that mighty figure. Could it be that there was something he did not notice? As for the old man's cultivation, how many spiritual veins he had, or what his cultivation was, Xiaoyang could not see through him. Therefore, he was still doubtful and pondering in his heart. However, due to the lack of results, he could only be anxious. Mu Yang, on the other hand, looked on in confusion. He really couldn't understand what was going on. As for the other party's attitude, it was indeed a little strange. It made people scratch their heads, unable to understand what was going on. However, seeing how Xiaoyang looked like he was facing a great enemy, Mu Yang knew that the old man was not a friend. If it wasn't for the restriction of fate in the 3,000 small worlds, you might have already become a martial king. Haha, what a pity, what a pity. Because of the restriction of fate, no matter how heaven-defying you geniuses are, you can only reach the peak of Kingwu. You can only continue to innovate. If there are no experts at that level who have fallen, you can only worry. the old man said as his smile became more and more carefree. He felt that these geniuses were indeed very talented, making others envious. At the same time, because of the rules, they could only worry. Many geniuses even died of depression. Regarding this, the old man had already seen far too many times. Every time he found out that geniuses died of depression, he felt very happy. Although fate was limited, he could take a share. As for the rest, what did it have to do with him? Therefore, this was not something that he needed to worry about. On the other hand, looking at those talented people who had spent their entire lives working hard, but could only watch helplessly as their lifespans came to an end, unable to change anything, that kind of helplessness really made one feel incomparable pity. However, this was the way of the world. It was extremely heartless. Suddenly, Xiaoyang raised his head and looked at the old man. His eyes were filled with disbelief. This was because he felt that the possibility of this happening was too small. However, this was the only explanation. "You are Han Jingming," Xiaoyang said word by word. His eyes were filled with disbelief, and his expression was complicated. Chapter 2010. When the old man heard this, he was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and nodded, openly admitting it. The fact that this little guy was able to see through his identity in such a short period of time made him feel a little surprised. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was not surprising. After receiving the old man's approval, Xiaoyang's expression became even more serious. Even the pressure in his heart increased exponentially at this moment. He was not calm at all. The first time Xiaoyang heard of Han Jingming was in the Pisces token. It was told to him by the Emperor God. When Xiaoyang was on his way to the dark fighting world, he received the message from the Emperor God. The God Realm's expedition to the Greenly world could be said to be a great victory. However, there were some mishaps. There was a fish that escaped the net. Moreover, it was the most important one. The Greenly world's ancestor, Han Jingming, escaped by sacrificing his own disciple and being willing to set up a 1,000-year-old array. After that, although the Emperor Qin pursued with all his might, he lost contact with him not long after. He could only return to the God Realm and put the matter aside for the time being. Xiaoyang would never have thought that the Greenly world's ancestor would escape to this place. It was really depressing. This kind of luck was really a little too bad. This could be said to be a small world for enemies. If it was a mighty figure from another place without any grudges, there was still a possibility that this matter could be resolved. However, the person in front of him could not wait to skin Xiaoyang alive. Back in the Tomb of the Gods, Han Fenglu could be said to have calculated everything. Every step of the plan could be said to be extremely exquisite and just right. She could even have the God Realm in her hands 100 years later. However, she failed in the end because Xiaoyang found something wrong and broke the trap. It was also because of Han Fenglu's actions that the God Realm was angered. And all of this was rightfully shouldered by the Greenly world. Currently, Han Jingming was unable to return to his own world and was constantly wandering around the 3,000 small worlds. It could be said that he was homeless and was afraid of being discovered by the people of the divine world. And Han Fenglu, who was his most outstanding and even regarded as his future successor, had died in the hands of Xiaoyang. How could he remain calm? Therefore, Han Jingming rushed over as soon as he got the news from Xiaoyang. It could be said that all the plans of the Greenly world had come to nothing because of Xiaoyang's appearance. It was not enough to describe this as a blood feud. Mu Yang, on the other hand, was completely confused. He had never even heard of the incident before. "I can't believe you saw through it. Brat, you really have a keen heart and keen eyes." Han Jingming smiled and said. Although the old man was smiling, his heart was burning with rage. But at the same time he admired such a junior. It was not easy to have such courage and ability at such a young age. Xiaoyang took a deep breath. Since all of this had happened, there was no way to avoid it, and the battle between them was unavoidable. Furthermore, Xiaoyang was sure that Han Jingming's cultivation was at the martial dominator realm. Coincidentally, Han Jingming also had a share of the fate that could be counted with one's fingers. Back then, after this incident, the realm of the gods went on a punitive expedition to the Greenlee realm, mostly to kill the old monster Han Jingming and return the martial emperor's fate to the world. Then a new martial emperor would appear. If it was one of their own, that would naturally be the best outcome. If it was not, then they would try their best to rope him in. As long as he was not a cultivator from the Greenlee world, everything was negotiable. In other words, if Xiaoyang could kill Han Jingming in this battle, then he would have a high chance of obtaining the fate. It was even possible for him to break through to the martial emperor realm. But Xiaoyang was facing an expert in the martial emperor realm. How could it be easy to kill him? Therefore, this was an extremely difficult task to begin with. It was even possible that Xiaoyang would die in this battle. You were able to see through the trap that Feng Lu and I set up together. That's really impressive. Han Jingming was not stingy with his compliments and said with a smile. Xiaoyang smiled faintly and said, "It's just a coincidence." When Han Jingming heard the word coincidence, he was not angry, because to him, this was indeed a very normal thing. It was not strange at all. After all, sometimes an extremely meticulous trap could be broken by a coincidence. That made sense. If an outsider could see through it from the beginning, then there would be a problem. Since ancient times, there had been many coincidences. Even Han Jingming himself had seen quite a few of them. It seems like your luck is really not bad, Han Jingming said with a smile. Xiaoyang also smiled and nodded. If his luck was really bad, he would definitely not have reached this stage. Although Xiaoyang had fought for a lot of things along the way with his own strength. But if the opportunity did not appear, how could he fight for it? Now that you've seen me, what do you think? Are you so scared that you're about to break down? But you still have to pretend to be calm? This feeling is not good, right? Han Jingming said with a smile. Han Jingming enjoyed the torment of his mental state. Since Xiaoyang knew about his background, then he should also understand how huge the gap between their strength was. Moreover, it was irreparable. Xiaoyang shook his head with a smile. So what if you're a martial emperor? That's just because you have a home that you can't go back to. If you don't leave the realm of gods, you'll be a homeless dog forever. Do I need to be scared of a homeless dog? Hearing this, Mu Yang's courage was completely shattered. He was about to break down. The old man in front of him was a martial emperor. How terrifying was that? Rumor had it that a martial emperor could kill a cultivator at the peak of Kingwu as easily as drinking water. The difference between the two was like the difference between the clouds and the mud. It was immeasurable. Such a powerful existence almost made Mu Yang lose all hope. How could he fight against such a powerful person? He even felt that it would not be too much to just wait for death. Xiaoyang was even more daring. He called one of the few powerful cultivators in the 3,000 small worlds a homeless dog. He really did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Chapter 2011. When Han Jingming heard this, it was as if he had been stabbed in his sore spot. He immediately frowned and revealed his ferocious side. Instantly, an overbearing aura swept out. However, all of this happened in an instant. It was under control in the blink of an eye. However, in this short instant, Mu Yang's entire body was shaken to the point that the blood in his body was in turmoil. Even his spiritual energy showed signs of going berserk. It was extremely terrifying. Fortunately, it was only for an instant. If it had been any longer, Mu Yang would definitely not have had it easy. Perhaps he would have been severely injured before he could even make a move. Xiaoyang's foundation was solid. In addition, he had 5 spiritual meridians. It could be said that he was at the peak of King Wu's realm. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was half a step into the realm of a martial emperor. Therefore, he stood there, unmoving like a mountain. Haha, good lad. You really have a sharp tongue. I was almost angered by you. Han Jingming laughed. Everything seemed to be over as if nothing had happened. When Xiaoyang received such a reply, he also smiled and did not continue speaking about this matter. However, the pressure in his heart for the upcoming battle was not small. Moreover, how to end it had also become a huge problem. You are indeed very courageous. However, it is a pity that you were not born in the Greenly world. Instead, you were born in such a remote place. Not only can this world not provide you with many resources, but it is also a burden to you now. Han Jingming said regretfully. Xiaoyang snorted in disdain and said, "So this is the reason why you abandoned the Greenly world." A wise man submits to circumstances, Han Jingming said with a smile. From Han Jingming's point of view, the reason why Xiaoyang did not escape after knowing his identity was probably because he could not let go of the flowing cloud world. Therefore, he did not leave so easily. Of course, to him, this was good news. If this lad escaped, his whereabouts would definitely be exposed. At that time, he would probably have to be on tenterhooks to avoid being hunted down by the Almighty from the realm of the gods. For someone who was willing to sacrifice his disciple's life to pave a way out for himself, it could be said that he was inhumane. Therefore, Xiaoyang had to be even more careful when dealing with this kind of old monster who had seen through too many things. Who knew when such a lunatic would do something crazy? When that time came, the consequences would be immeasurable. "I'm wondering if you're really not afraid or just pretending to be calm," Han Jingming said with a smile. Xiaoyang yawned and said, "You're not blind, can't you tell?" While speaking, Xiaoyang's mind had already begun to calculate frantically. He knew very well that this was an unavoidable battle. He had to rack his brains and use all his skills to win this battle. Moreover, how to achieve victory had become an extremely difficult problem. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this was Xiaoyang's current worry. The current Xiaoyang could be said to be extremely helpless. He also didn't know what he could do to have a chance. Sometimes reality was just that cruel. No matter how many methods one came up with, in the end, they would all be useless and wouldn't be of much benefit. I can see that. Since you've said so, then I know what's going on. Since you're so anxious about your world, do you think that if I kill one expert a day here, it'll be very painful for you? Han Jingming said with a smile. When these words came out, Xiaoyang's expression couldn't help but change. It could be said that Han Jingming's intentions were extremely sinister. He didn't kill Xiaoyang. Instead, he slaughtered the cultivators of the flowing cloud world one by one. This would undoubtedly be a devastating blow to Xiaoyang, who wanted to raise the flowing cloud world's strength. At that time, Xiaoyang would definitely feel like his heart was being cut by a knife. He might even be unable to control himself. The first to be nervous was Mu Yang. In his opinion, he might be the first to bear the brunt of this because of his appearance this time. A total of 5 9th-level cultivators. It'll take 5 days to kill. There's not a single 8th-level cultivator, only 1 7th-level cultivator, and quite a few 6th-level cultivators. It can be said that it'll take a month to kill them. Han Jingming glanced over and said with interest. Instantly, Xiaoyang's eyebrows furrowed together. It could be said that these experts were all his blood and sweat. If they were really killed by Han Jingming, regardless of their relationship, it would definitely be an extremely heavy loss to the flowing cloud world. Han Jingming didn't intentionally suppress this sentence. In fact, all the cultivators of the flowing cloud world heard it. All of a sudden, the group of people felt that they were in danger and were terrified. If Han Jingming really did that, his method was a little too vicious. Looking at Han Jingming's character, it was clear that he was prepared to do that. Xiaoyang's chest heaved up and down. He had indeed fallen into a rage. If he died in battle, Xiaoyang could still accept it. However, how could he accept the destruction of the flowing cloud world? It could be said that Xiaoyang had already put too much effort into the flowing cloud world. If it was destroyed just like that, how could he accept it? Moreover, there were his brothers and friends down there. Indeed, If you are willing to serve me well and kowtow to me 3 times a day, I can change it to killing 1 person every 2 days. How about that?" Han Jingming smiled. Not only did this old man want to torture Xiaoyang, he also wanted to humiliate him. He wanted to trample all the pride he had in his life to the ground. Xiaoyang lowered his head and clenched his fists. Facing a martial emperor realm expert, he had no confidence at all. It could even be said that it was a dead end. It made him feel extremely helpless. On the other hand, Mu Yang remained silent. He knew very well that, as a 9th rank greater success, he had no right to speak before a martial emperor. Moreover, he didn't know what was going on. Originally, because Xiaoyang had become the leader of the Flowing Cloud World, many people saw the improvement of the Flowing Cloud World. However, the good days didn't last long. Now that they were facing a calamity, everyone felt depressed and hopeless. Although many people didn't know how terrifying Han Jingming's strength was, it was obvious how powerful he was to be able to stop Lord Xiao and Mu Yang from attacking him. "Kneel down now. Maybe if I'm happy, I can delay it for 2 more days. After all, being happy is the most important thing right now," Han Jingming said with a smile. Xiaoyang slowly raised his head, smiled, and said, "It's not a problem if you want to do so. However, I have already sent the news of your arrival to the God Realm." Instantly, Han Jingming's expression changed drastically. Chapter 2012. If his whereabouts were leaked and the realm of the gods knew about it, those almighties would probably rush over to track him down. This was definitely not good news for Han Jingming. It could even be said to be extremely bad news. Once the people of the realm of the gods found his hiding place, the consequences he would face would be extremely severe. It was possible that he might even lose his life because of this. Although the others did not know, Han Jingming knew very well that the last time the realm of the gods went on a punitive expedition against the Greenly realm, they directly sent King Zhao and King Qin, 2 almighty martial emperors. Their goal was to take his old life with certainty. The purpose of this was to allow the talented Princess Mingzhu to break through her cultivation level and become a martial emperor. It could be said that the realm of the gods had placed all their attention on Princess Mingzhu and were prepared to go all out against him. He was well aware of how crazy the current god realm was. As for whether Xiaoyang had spread the news to the realm of the gods, Han Jingming did not doubt it at all. Since Xiaoyang was able to bury a pseudo-spiritual vein in his city, it was obviously given by the realm of the gods. Furthermore, only the realm of the gods had such a thing. From this, it could be seen how much the realm of the gods valued Xiaoyang. Therefore, it was normal for them to give him other things. It was not strange at all. Xiaoyang had indeed done so because he did not know what would happen to him after this battle. Therefore, even if he was unlucky enough to die here, as long as the almighties of the realm of the gods arrived, there would be hope for him to take revenge. Even if he died, he had to drag his opponent down with him. In the realm of the gods, when the emperor of the gods received the news, he immediately stood up. He looked at the news on the Pisces token, and his hands were trembling with excitement. Jiang Zhangqing, who was playing chess with the emperor of the gods, raised his eyebrows and said, "Emperor of the gods, what good news did you receive? Why are you so excited?" "There's news about that old man Han Jingming." The emperor of the gods laughed. When Jiang Zhangqing heard this, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. He naturally understood that if they could kill Han Jingming, it would be good news for the realm of the gods. "Men, summon King Da, King Qin, and King Zhao. Tell the 3 of them to hurry to the drifting cloud realm and kill Han Jingming," the god emperor shouted. Immediately, someone received the order and left. However, after Jiang Zhangqing heard this news, his brows furrowed deeply, unable to decide what to do. "Prime Minister, what are you worried about? This is good news for us," the divine emperor said with a hearty laugh. Looking at the overjoyed god emperor, Jiang Zhangqing shook his head with a helpless smile and said, "If this old subject remembers correctly, Xiaoyang came from the flowing cloud realm. Since Han Jingming is in the flowing cloud world, then he is definitely targeting Xiaoyang. The moment he said that, the divine emperor looked at the Pisces token in his hand and frowned. At that moment, he came back to his senses and realized that this was indeed the case. Now he was really hesitant. If Han Jingming were to go up against Xiaoyang, then that little guy would have no chance of surviving. Jiang Zhangqing also shook his head helplessly. Suddenly, he lost interest in the matter. As long as they could kill Han Jingming, they would be able to empty the destiny. So what if there was one less Xiaoyang? At least to the realm of the gods, it was a win-win situation. However, from Jiang Zhangqing's point of view, they had invested a lot in Xiaoyang as well. In that case, as long as it could exchange for Princess Mingzhu's breakthrough, it seemed to be worth it. However, he still felt that he was losing out. In time, Xiaoyang would definitely be a great help to the realm of the gods. Now, Xiaoyang was only suppressed by the destiny. That was why he could not break through to the martial emperor realm. Of course, in the realm of the gods, there were many people who could break through to the martial emperor realm because of their destiny. Other than Wei Beixin, the other 3 of the 4 divine generals all had the potential. Among the younger generation, there were Princess Mingzhu and Lei Dingtian. Even Shen Wushuang and Shen Luo could do it. I hope he doesn't act rashly and leave if he can, the emperor god said with a sigh. Jiang Zhangqing smiled and shook his head. So what if Xiaoyang was already at the peak of Qingwu? In front of the martial emperor realm, he was still too weak. Even if you want to escape, it won't be an easy task. It might even be impossible. Even though the emperor god already knew this in his heart, he felt that Xiaoyang was a little different. He might really be able to create a miracle. That was very possible. However, how far he could go in the end would depend on his own fate. After all, there were many things that couldn't be explained in just a few words. When the king of Qin received the news, he immediately set off. This was because he had always felt guilty about this matter. Now that the opportunity had presented itself, he naturally would not miss it. At the same time, the Emperor Qin knew that this place was very far away from the flowing cloud realm. If he did not set off in time, the old man might escape. King De also set off in a hurry. On the other hand, King Zhao advanced at a steady pace. In the realm of the gods, the 3 kings also set off because of this news. In an instant, those who did not know what was going on began to guess what had happened to cause such a huge commotion. Kid, I wanted to let you stay for a few more days. You're digging your own grave by doing this. Han Jingming took a deep breath and said in a low voice. At the same time, Han Jingming was also glad that Xiaoyang wanted to protect the flowing cloud realm. That was why he had revealed this news. As for whether this guy was deliberately setting up a trap, Han Jingming did not want to think too much about it. This was because he knew very well that if there was a problem, he would be in big trouble. However, there were some things that he could be sure of. The realm of the gods was very far away from here. The reinforcements from the realm of the gods would arrive at least 10 days later. That was under the premise that the other side was rushing over at full speed. Xiaoyang shrugged with a smile and said, I might not be looking to die, but I can be sure that as long as you die, I'll be the closest to you. I'll be able to enjoy the benefits of a favorable position and step into the martial emperor realm first. Although the danger that Xiaoyang was facing was unprecedented, the rewards were equally great. As long as he could kill his opponent, he would be able to form an alliance. Chapter 2013. Han Jingming smiled. He really couldn't understand this young man's train of thought. Perhaps it was because he was young and frivolous, but under such pressure he was still indifferent. He even thought that riches and honor could only be found in the midst of danger. Taking chestnuts out of the fire like this would only lead to him getting burned, and he would be reduced to ashes in the end. Of course, there had always been many outstanding people who had grown by constantly challenging themselves like this. Han Jingming wouldn't deny this point because he had done many such feats in the past. However, things were different now. Moreover, the gap between them was 2 completely different realms. Furthermore, Their powers were different from each other. Their battle was on a completely different level, and the gap between them wasn't something that two more spirit veins could make up for. At least, from Han Jingming's point of view, Muyang was just throwing an egg at a rock and seeking his own death. "You've got some big words there, haven't you?" Han Jingming said. At this moment, the aura of his body changed tremendously. The aura of a martial emperor was slowly being released at this moment. In an instant, the atmosphere became a lot weirder, and the pressure continued to increase. Although this pressure was nothing to Xiaoyang, it was an extremely terrifying existence to Muyang. In fact, he even found it hard to control himself, and his hands and feet began to tremble uncontrollably. This was the fear of the strong, which was why he was like this. Return to Northern Light City and don't think about anything else. Xiaoyang took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, although Muyang had a saint-grade upper artifact, his cultivation was only at the 9th level. It was almost impossible for him to be of any help in this battle. Furthermore, Xiaoyang couldn't even protect himself. If anything happened to Muyang, how could he help him when he couldn't even take care of himself? In the worst-case scenario, even if Xiaoyang died, the flowing cloud world still had Muyang, and they didn't have to be afraid of the profound fighting world's counterattack. Under such a grim situation, it was not possible to turn the situation around with a rash method. Therefore, the only thing they could do now was to preserve as much of their top combat strength as possible to protect the flowing cloud realm in the future. Although Xiaoyang thought a lot, the reality was often cruel. Whether or not he could defeat his opponent was still unknown. He had to be cautious and prepare for the worst. Hearing this, Muyang lightly nodded his head and immediately retreated towards the North Light City, not daring to hesitate or stay. Han Jingming did not stop them because, in his opinion, these ants were unable to change the situation at all. It was not important to let them live a little longer. Moreover, he was also very curious about the Northern Light City's formation and pseudo-spirit vein. If he could grasp them in his hands, it wouldn't be bad. Therefore, if he left some alive, they might be able to help him. After Muyang left, Xiaoyang calmed down and focused on his opponent. Suddenly, a mysterious light flashed and the Thunderfire Divine sword appeared in his hand. It could be said that this was the highest grade magic weapon he had and he could only use it. At the same time, he immediately gathered his will and spirit. He knew very well that he had no way out. Therefore, he had to give it his all and not be careless. When Han Jingming felt that Xiaoyang's aura had completely gathered at this moment, the smile on Xiaoyang's face also slowly disappeared. As expected, extraordinary. This strength is enough to look down on the entire Kingwu realm. Han Jingming sighed from the bottom of his heart. Although Han Jingming admired Xiaoyang, this was a different matter. This deep hatred still had to be avenged. Xiaoyang held the Thunderfire Divine sword in front of his chest, and immediately, waves of spiritual energy continuously poured into it. The divine sword seemed to have sensed its master's thoughts and immediately emitted a sword aura. Its power was even more terrifying. Wherever the sword aura went, it could only be described as terrifying. Meanwhile, Han Jingming still stood there with a nonchalant look on his face. After all, to him, it was just crushing an ant. Why should he think too much about it? Moreover, such a small matter did not require too much thought. Xiaoyang did not move either. He just stood there and focused. Xiaoyang had already thought it through. It would be best if he could stall for more time. If he could hold on until the reinforcements from the realm of the gods arrived, that would naturally be the best outcome. Of course, whether or not Han Jingming would give him such an opportunity was another matter. However, as long as Han Jingming did not take the initiative to attack, Xiaoyang would not make a move either. It was a stalemate. Han Jingming was as still as a mountain, waiting for the clown to take the lead. Moreover, he was watching with interest. He was not in a hurry and was very patient. Both parties were not in a hurry. However, they both had their own plans. Han Jingming wanted to see when this young man would not be able to withstand the huge pressure and make a move. Then he would discover that his own realm and strength were just an illusion. There was no way to change anything at all. In the end, he would only be able to die with regret, as he had tortured and killed too many people. Han Jingming's mentality had also undergone a huge change. He enjoyed this process very much and felt that it was very wonderful. The pleasure that it could bring him was even more extraordinary. Xiaoyang was still as a mountain. If you don't move, I won't move. It was as simple as that. On the other hand, those who were watching the battle were very confused. What was going on? Why were both parties in such a stalemate? Little guy, don't tell me you don't even have the courage to attack? If that's really the case, then it's too sad, Han Jingming said with a smile. Xiaoyang was still fully focused and did not dare to let down his guard. He pretended to be relaxed and said, "Aren't you also afraid to attack?" It was just talking nonsense. Xiaoyang did not care. When Han Jingming heard this, he laughed. This sharp-tongued brat had obviously seen through everything and wanted to delay time on purpose. However, this point also allowed him to be clear. The realm of the gods indeed knew about this matter. Therefore, he had to be more careful. Since you feel that I don't dare to attack, then I will. Let's see how many hits you can take, Han Jingming said with a smile. As soon as his voice fell, Han Jingming immediately slapped down with a flip of his hand. Everything looked light and ordinary. Chapter 2014. Although Han Jingming's attack seemed casual, the force of the palm could not be ignored. Suddenly, a strong oppressive force surged out, and the huge palm print fell directly. Xiaoyang frowned when he felt the strong energy fluctuation. In the next moment, he roared and rushed to the sky. With the power of the divine sword, he charged forward. Han Jingming was not in a hurry. Instead, he looked on with interest. After all, it was very interesting to tease Xiao by like this. After these ants struggled with all their might and realized that they could not change their fate, their despair was like a delicious meal that left a lasting aftertaste. Xiaoyang's sword could be said to be moving forward without the slightest hint of fear. He even mobilized the spiritual energy of 5 spiritual meridians in this sword. Facing such a strong opponent, he had to go all out. Perhaps a single hungry who would bring disaster upon himself. It was also because Xiaoyang was too clear about the situation and the strength of his forces that he needed to make careful calculations. Rumble. When the sword pierced into the palm print, the sword aura of lightning and fire surged out continuously. It was very terrifying. The 3 forces continued to crush and collide with each other. Waves of strong aftershocks rippled out continuously like ripples on the water surface. In a moment, the power of the palm print was completely shattered by the divine sword. It did not hurt Xiaoyang at all. Instead, he stood there unscathed. Of course, Xiaoyang's calmness was only on the surface. This casual palm strike had already caused cracks to appear on his will qi. If the opponent attacked seriously, how terrifying would the power be? Thinking of this, Xiaoyang couldn't help but shiver subconsciously. It could be said that there were too many unpredictable things. The difference in strength between the two was like heaven and earth. They were not on the same level at all. Han Jingming was a little surprised when he saw this. Although the palm print was less than 30% of his power, the opponent was unscathed. This was a little inexplicable. Could it be that the 5 spiritual meridians were really extraordinary? At the same time, Xiaoyang also read another piece of information. The injuries that Han Jingming suffered in the Green Li World battle had not fully recovered. Therefore, there were some flaws in his palm print. After receiving this information, Xiaoyang's confidence also increased by quite a bit. He felt that all of this was still possible. If he went all out, he might really be able to find the opponent's weakness and even kill him on the spot. That was possible. As for the price that he would have to pay, that was not within the scope of Xiaoyang's concern. As long as he could kill him, even if he was only half alive, it was a deal that would definitely be profitable. Of course, from the beginning, Xiaoyang did not expect that he was already in a dead end. Good lad, you can even block this. It seems that the realm of the gods values you, for a reason. You are so unreasonably strong. I'm afraid that only Princess Ming Zhu can be compared to you. Han Jingming said seriously. Although Princess Ming Zhu was very famous, Han Jingming had never seen her before. However, after seeing Xiaoyang's abilities, he felt that in King Wu's realm, this lad's abilities were the strongest and most terrifying. Xiaoyang only smiled faintly. He held the divine sword horizontally and prepared to block again. In Borealis City, when Muyang landed, many people immediately rushed over. Chun Mingho and Baldi were also very anxious. They asked, "Senior, how can we help the city lord?" Chu Taiyin and Xiao Chongsheng, who had rushed over in time, also looked at Muyang anxiously. They hoped that this knowledgeable senior would be able to come up with a plan so that they would not be anxious here. Sun Yu Kai, Qian Guangqi, and the others had also rushed over. It could be said that they had all gathered here to help Xiaoyang. However, because they did not know the situation, they did not act rashly. They were afraid that they would do something bad with good intentions. After all, they were facing the strongest opponent in the history of the Flowing Cloud Realm. Moreover, the only person who could barely fight against him was Xiaoyang. Muyang shook his head helplessly. He said, "The opponent is a martial emperor expert. Our little bit of cultivation is nothing to him. The only thing we can do now is to stay here obediently and not cause trouble for Xiaoyang." As soon as these words came out, everyone couldn't help but feel extremely uncomfortable. Could it be that they could only watch on helplessly and not do anything? If that was the case, it would be better to kill them. Everyone had different thoughts in their hearts, but at the same time, they were all thinking about what they should do. Qian Guangqi gritted his teeth. He said, "Even if we are ants, we can still bite that elephant to death with our numbers." Arctic Gray Feather and the others nodded. They felt that it was indeed the case. But with our teeth, we can't even bite through the skin of others. If we go, we will only be sending ourselves to death. "It is meaningless," Muyang said helplessly. This bucket of cold water poured down on everyone's hearts, making them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. This kind of feeling could be said to be very terrible. Could it be that they could only watch as everything happened and watch as Xiaoyang died, while they could only wait for their deaths? Wasn't this kind of ending a little helpless? Sun Yukai, on the other hand, kept walking. He was also thinking about this matter. Although his cultivation was the lowest here, no one dared to underestimate him. At the same time, Sun Yukai also felt that there must be a way. As for what it was just that he had not thought of it yet. It could be said that everyone here was already prepared to die. As long as they could help Xiaoyang, they could accept it. However, they could not die for no reason. As long as they could kill their opponent, even if they had to sacrifice themselves, no one would frown. Who here had not received Xiaoyang's help? To put it more broadly, if it were not for Xiaoyang, they would not have the glory they had today. Baldi had just stepped into the 9th stage when he encountered such a situation. He rubbed his bald head and was extremely vexed. Why was his luck so bad all of a sudden?